Down here in the South, in Texas and Houston, Coyote F-150s, that's the wave right now. That is the Mexican GTR. Like, that's what I always say. As a stoplight racer, not a road racer, but like a dig racer, that truck is basically unbeatable. When it comes to a solid NA build, the LS and LT is gonna be king purely based off how the block design is. It's a smaller spacing between the bores, so you can only bore it out so much before you start to encroach on the next cylinder. BMW is one of the most hardcore engineering companies on the planet when it comes to design and stuff. I would say the VR38, the GTR model, is the best Japanese turbo engine probably ever. You'll see this in the LS community a lot. Ask them a question, why don't you like Coyotes? First thing they're gonna say is, oh, it has 4 cams, the timing chains, oil pump gears. Like, if it's easy to get to 1,000 wheel horsepower, boosting fuel with a Coyote, much easier than it is with an LS, technically, in my opinion, that would make that engine better because I can achieve that goal much quicker.
What is preventing you from constantly putting out content right now at this moment?
So like right now, like,
Welcome back to another episode of the Street Alpha Podcast. I am your host, Tukes, and today we are in Louisiana. It's the first time in Louisiana. It's pretty hot out, summertime. You know how it goes. But today we have the pleasure of sitting with 337 Speed. You guys may have seen him on TikTok and YouTube, doing a ton of viral content on TikTok. He pretty much breaks down the science and the, I guess, the anatomy of engines and
just all the inner
backstories.
workings and just like some of the engineering background and just simplifying it so like younger people that are getting into the auto industry, they can learn easily. And you have this cinematic format where it's like easy to digest and it's a cool video. It's something cool to watch and you can be proud of. Like if you own a GTR, or if you own a Evo, or if you own a Subi, like, okay, this is the story of my engine. And it's cool stuff.
Right. So he makes the breakdown super digestible. I've learned a lot from your content too.
Oh, that's cool.
It's been a good reference for me to go into a lot of other interviews and kind of like just to get like a brief like understanding of how a platform works. But the most interesting thing to me is how you started this whole content creation thing and how you got into it, especially being from Louisiana. I don't even know what it's like over here. As you guys know, Dan Rue is from Louisiana. And I just realized that before.
Yeah, Dan is an OG. Like, he went to meets all the time, like with his GTR, running people. Like, he was active in the streets. A lot of people are just learning about Dan, like in the car community. Like, oh, I didn't know the dancing guy had a GTR. Like, bro, like he was active down here in the streets. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go. Credibility there with
But like the initial side of the channel, like if you look at my YouTube channel and like where it started, like before I started doing the cinematic videos and all the nice polished stuff, like me and my brother, pretty much my brother is the biggest influence of me getting into cars because he bought like this old 1996 Tahoe and he wanted to build it up, twin turbo it, and it was an old small block truck. So like the small blocks, a lot of people aren't doing stuff like that back in like 2015, 2016. It was mostly like if you want to turbo something, you'll turbo in the LS or you'll mess with Coyotes, but this is an old small block truck. And he actually wanted to go through with twin turbo in this truck. And I was like, this can be some very, very good content for YouTube. And I was in community college at the time learning instrumentation, which was pretty much learning about like PSI gauge, PSI atmosphere, sensor ranges, 0 to 5 volt ranges and stuff, pulse width modulation. Didn't even know this would transfer into what I'm doing now, like learning about engines. It's all very related. And I thought this would be good content to just make a video of and see what happens. So it was just like one of the best times of my life where it's just me and my brother with an old ass Tahoe just in the back shed somewhere, we rebuilding the engine because when he bought it, all the valve springs were like broken and it was making a lot of top end noise. So just me and him just learning about how an engine works and the 4-stroke cycle, how like a pushrod and rockers work. You have the camshaft in the middle of the block. You got the lifter on top. You got the pushrod pushing on the rocker, and the ratio of that is like a 1.7. So let's say like if you get 400 inches of lift here times 1.7, that's how much valve lift you get. And it was just like you're learning the inner workings of the engine. You got your brother, and we're starting a YouTube channel. and we put out the first video. And if you look on my channel to go to oldest, and you sort by oldest, it's the oldest video on there. And that's literally how we started. And I remember when I uploaded it, got like 5 or 10 views. Probably your family members like, oh, look nephew building engines in the back over there. So it's like you're getting all your family to kind of look at like seeing you explore engines and stuff like that. And then I remember it was just like one day, like I refreshed it and it was like 300. Then it was a 400. Then it went to 1,000. Then like 10,000. Like it started to run. So like during that initial month, like it got like almost 100,000 views. Was that like 80 or 70,000 if I remember? Yeah. And I was like, okay, this could actually be like an actual thing. Right. And during that time, YouTube had the partner program where you didn't have all these requirements to get paid by YouTube. So all you needed was just like, I think it was like 1,000 hours of watch time and like 100 subscribers, some very, very low achievable minimum. And we had that by the time that video started running. So I started to see with the AdSense account, there started to have like money being made from it. So I'm like, okay, this can actually be a business, not just like, okay, you're getting popular or you're like building stuff and you just putting in content. You're actually getting paid from this now. Right. So then we just go crazy with it. So we rebuild the truck, we twin turbo it. I learned a whole bunch of stuff about turbos. I learned everything how to do it right and how to do it wrong, because we did it very wrong in the beginning. And over the course of that, like the building process of that truck really got my channel started, got our name out there locally, especially. And it was just a very, very fun time for me. And then later on, I would transition into doing the more polished videos because I've always had a knack for video editing. Right. So I kind of wanted to show my skills in a certain aspect. So I was like, I saw on YouTube that people do these things called video essays where like they'll choose a topic, they'll pick clips on there and they'll narrate it and talk about it and break things down. And I thought it would be a good idea to do that about like engines. Right. So one of my first videos of doing that is the LS versus LT debate. Like which one is better? Like this one has direct injection. It's more expensive. The LS is a little bit cheaper, but it's a dumber motor. It doesn't have the variable valve timing, especially if you have like the traditional LS3, the LS6, the LS9, the LSAs. You have the variable valve timing on some of the Vortec motors, but it's like you're breaking things down. And I voiced it over, pick clips there. Okay, if I'm talking about Corvettes, I'll show a clip of a Corvette. I was talking about a truck motor, I'm showing a clip of a truck. Yeah. And I put it out there, and literally within the first week, it got like over 100,000 views. I was like, I'm not on camera. Like, now I'm faceless. Yeah, I'm faceless. I'm explaining things. And maybe it's just my voice, because people always said in the comments, like, oh, he sounds like Morgan Freeman or some shit. So like either it was the voice or the editing skills. And it found a new pathway for me to kind of express a little bit more, because you don't always have access to everything. So like, if I want to talk about a GTR, I don't have a GTR, but I know a lot about it, and I want to show people like some of the engineering differences between the generations. So if I make a video on it and it does good, it helps promote the next wave and next wave, next wave. My goal is just to touch everything, because there's like a slew of car culture and models of ranges of cars, especially like from Australia, like the G8s and the Holden Commodores and stuff. That's such cool stuff that a lot of people in the States really don't know about, because it's just nobody has really kind of presented it very digestible. So that's my goal, is to just kind of just show everything across the world and make it digestible, and people can kind of get into the car scene like that. So would you say that you learned most of your knowledge from just like pretty much working with your brother, or doing research on these videos? So it was a combination, because when you don't have a basis of knowledge, you're just grabbing whatever you can grab off online. And the way that my brother would explain it to me. So like my brother understood it, but sometimes he wouldn't explain it in like the very technical SAE type of way. Like he'll explain like a camshaft a certain way. Like, okay, you look at this little this rod, it has these little peaks on it, and where the peaks are, it rides on the lobe, and then that pushes up on the valve and it opens it a certain amount of time. The more it opens, it makes more power. It's like there's a more technical explanation to that, but at least I'm understanding the way it works. And then I would refine my understanding by using all the online tools. Like I would look at like the camshaft manufacturers, see the specs that they have, compare that to other different cams, and then reading forums as well. Like, why does Why would you want more duration in this area? Why would you want a lower lobe separation angle? Well, a tighter lobe separation angle induces more overlap in the cam and helps scavenging, which helps the mid-range power of an engine. And then more, let's say, duration on the exhaust side. You'll typically see that with turbo cams or boost cams because you're forcing air into the engine, and now it's not used to that amount of air. So essentially, you have to evacuate that air, and you have to oversaturate the duration on the exhaust side. So you get to understand, okay, like why are companies doing this? If you see these little anomalies, you can kind of connect the dots. So like all my research in the beginning was just like Wikipedia, like going to the manufacturer's website, seeing what they're talking about, watching their videos, and a lot of YouTube. And you get a very good base knowledge of that. I mean, I believe YouTube can get you to 80 to 90% of the actual understanding of like engines and how everything works. Like right now, we're in the age of information. There's no reason to like to
everything's
really be
out there.
Yeah, everything's out there. Everybody wants to teach. Everybody wants to show knowledge and show how much knowledgeable they are of a subject. So I like that, and it just helps the next generation get better and better.
So you did mention to me before, right, that you had a Honda, so you're basically you're an import guy.
Like initially, like my just from my childhood, like playing games like Need for Speed Underground, Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, like I had a liking to Japanese cars. So like my first car was a Honda Civic EG hatch D16 Y8, I believe. I mean, the car made like 120 horse, had like the early version of VTEC or whatever.
That's fast, bro.
I mean, it doesn't weigh anything. The car's what, like wet. I mean, it may weigh what, 2,500 pounds?
Something like that.
Super lightweight. Now, during the time, like I had no motion. Like I wasn't making any money. So like I couldn't afford insurance on the car. So I was driving it at night, trying to stay away from the laws and stuff like that. But me having that car, it was like, that's your first car. That's like your first feeling of like freedom. So like it just stuck with me like forever. But I had a decision to make. I'm not making any money and I need to do something. At the time, I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have any kids. I don't have any kids now, but I didn't have a kid. So I was like, this is the time I can take risks and do something crazy and see if it works out. If it doesn't, I can always go into the instrumentation route, go work at the refineries in Lake Charles, because that's originally where I'm from, 60 miles away in Lake Charles. It's a refinery town. So my grandfather, he worked at refineries all his life. He retired off of that, have a very, very nice living with that. So like I always saw that, hey, that's my backup plan. If this doesn't work, I'm going to work at a refinery, make 6 figures, and I'll be good. I have my big lifted diesel truck, I'll be straight. But going to the when I still had my Honda, I made the decision to sell the Honda, and I sold it for $1,600. I remember I bought a $1,000 DSLR Nikon camera, and I bought a $600 laptop. And I said, hey, I'm gonna start making YouTube videos. And that was the same time my brother told me he was gonna go buy a vehicle and to build. And I wanted to film it. I was like, hey, this is the perfect time. I get to film videos on a topic that I'm actually passionate about, which is automotive and vehicles, and then hopefully I can make money off of it to use that as my job. And ever since that first video posted in 2016, 2015, 2016, I've been doing it full time since. Consistent.
So you're a full-time content creator.
I'm a full-time content creator now. That's all I do now.
Wow.
And at the rate that I put out videos, like I don't really make videos very, very often, and it's still supporting my living. So I'm just like, if I hunker down and get a team behind me, it's over with. It's over with. But that's just the thing. It's like this is like a very, very big learning experience, and I feel blessed to be in this position because I'm actually in an industry that I actually like to do it. Like every day, like if I wasn't getting paid for making the videos, I still would be making because I enjoy the process of doing that.
That's what's most important.
So just to be able to support my living off of that, absolutely blessed off that.
Same for me. I feel the same way. Like I would do this. I would do this for free, but I mean, you know, obviously the amount of travel and stuff, you have to get paid somehow.
Exactly.
But if that was taken care of, I'm not looking for profit. You know, I'm not looking to put money in my pocket. It's cool. So you had the Honda, right? And then you got into obviously the American side of things, right? So what were some of the differences that you felt like you noticed the most between the two at the time?
So between like the Hondas and like the American cars, it was always like the quality of the finished product wasn't there. Like I had a 94 Honda Civic, and obviously the previous owner is up to like how well they maintain the vehicle. But like this car was a 1994. At the time, it was 20 something years old, and the interior was just like immaculate. Everything worked, every button worked, and it was a difference between what I'm normally used to with like growing up with American vehicles and my parents and stuff like that. Half the shit always breaks. It's pointless. And it was a big transition whenever I sold that car, started doing the YouTube side, started making money, and then I bought myself another vehicle. I bought a 2002 Pontiac Trans Am. So this was like, at the time, it was the last year model of that F-body style. It was a Trans Am. It was the rare one, the WS6 package, got the ram air hood, the big hood scoops and all that. That car looks cool on paper, but actually living with it, the interior is just like completely garbage. The car doesn't handle right. The only reason you buy that vehicle was purely for the engine. The engine it had was the LS1, the first LS ever made. So like, I remember growing up, I saw like Pontiac Trans Am commercials, and I always thought it was a cool looking car. So once I finally bought one, it's like you're never supposed to meet your heroes. It's just, that car was just, it's all over the place. It was a great car, and it taught me into the LS side, because you have to remember that truck that we built, the twin turbo power stroke diesel powered small block Chevy, using power stroke diesel turbos, but that's all small block stuff. That's small block architecture.
Right.
It carries over into the LSs, but there's a lot of differences, like how the block structure is. Like the LSs have a deep skirted Y block rather than the small blocks. A lot of that bottom part of the block is oil pan. So on this one, it's skirted. It has 6-bolt mains. So it's cross bolted, and it's 4 bolts at the top, 2 cross bolted. So it's a very, very strong architecture, but it's still a pushrod engine. So when it comes to the camshaft, lifters, rockers, all that architecture is basically the same, just redesigned for that LS.
Right.
But so a lot of things carried over, but one thing that I had to learn very quickly was like the tuning is completely different.
Okay.
So the old small block that we built in the Tahoe, you couldn't tune those PCMs. So the way to get around it was to do something like a piggyback. So like what's very popular now, like in the BMW things,
Honda,
Honda JB4s and stuff. So like piggybacks are very, very popular, but a piggyback for that style of truck was very, very hard to do because this was a piggyback that you had to wire in. It was called an AEM, so like AEM, the company, and it was called an FIC8, which was a fuel ignition controller for 8 cylinders.
Right.
So you wire this thing in, what it does, it allows you to retard timing, and it allows you to change the signal going to the injectors to either add or detract fuel from the maps. And adding this on top of this small block, it was at the time it was cool and it was like new, but looking at how the LS architecture is and how Coyote architecture is, it's more complicated, but the idle quality is better. Like there's so many different maps that you're adjusting. If you look into HB tuners and look at like airflow under like a Gen 3 LS, you have so many different maps for idle, throttle cracker, like when you're driving, go to and pull up to a stop to be able to keep the throttle open a little bit so it doesn't die. Like there's so many different maps you can adjust where you can make an engine that makes 1,000 horsepower drive literally like stock, and you just don't have that ability with that truck. So that truck was awesome at full throttle, full tilt, full boost. Everywhere else was wrong because you're a piggyback. You're adjusting maps, but you're not adjusting like the actual base map. You're adjusting the signal that comes out of that, out of the ECU. So you're not adjusting the actual maps themselves. So like if you adjust everything for wide open throttle, it'll drive awesome on wide open throttle. But everywhere else in the drivability side is completely wrong. And that truck kind of taught me all the fun stuff. It made views. I mean, that truck in certain videos, talking about back in the day in 2015, 2017, only had like 20, 30,000 subscribers. Some of those videos were hitting 400K. So like it was paying for when we blew stuff up. Like when we blew the transmission, it paid for the transmission. Like the money was coming in on it, but I knew this wasn't the right way, and there is a next level to it. So that's when I jumped into the LS stuff with the Trans Am, and that was I would say a big eye-opening experience because you get to look at the tuning side. They make so much more power, so much easier. Like that small block before the turbos with the LT4 hot cam and the Pro Max heads it was probably making 300 crank off of boost.
Okay.
When we dynoed it with the turbos, it made 400 wheel and like 600 torque. It made crazy torque. That's how small blocks are. They're very torquey engines. But with LS's, pretty much a bone stock 5.3 will make those numbers of a mildly built small block. The LS1 I had, the LS1s are technically seen as the low tier LSs because they're still cathedral port. It's still the older tech, the older ECUs. It's not a Gen 4 ECU, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, with a cam and a head swap, you can make 450 wheel with it, which is pretty decent. I mean, 450 wheel is still 500 something crank with a manual. So, I mean, it's still decently competitive by today's standards. You have to think about price as well. So when it comes into like a Gen 1 Coyote, the engine is $5 or $6 grand. I mean, if I buy a LS1 for $2,500, throw $1,000 worth of a cam kit, do a head swap and some aftermarket sheet metal intake, I'm making the same power. So to me, like the LS kind of opened my eyes big time of like, there is way more power to grasp. And then after that, then I kind of built a drag car. Okay. So I bought this 95 S14. So it was a Nissan 240SX.
Okay.
I didn't want to go a Japanese engine solely because they're just much more expensive. I'm not talking about cases. This is before I really got like into Honda engine. I had a Honda in the beginning, but I wasn't really big into Honda engines.
Okay, so you like, just had it as a daily. It wasn't really it wasn't really a moment for you to realize like, you know, this is going to be, if it's going to be expensive or not to build Honda.
Exactly.
Got you. Okay.
So like this was before I really understood about like K-Series and pretty much how that is the lane that I should have went with that car.
Okay.
I didn't want to build any other Japanese engines because they just were going to cost too much. You already know, like a RB is like a solid 1,000 horse RB is going to be 30 grand. Yeah. I mean, 2J, easily. Maybe
1,000.
Yeah. I mean, with a 2J, possibly 25. 2J is a little bit cheaper than RBs. Yeah. RBs, you got to get everything from Australia.
Right.
2Js, you can get some stuff domestically, like Real Street, J.
A lot
Real
of stuff
Street.
you can get domestically, yeah.
But with an LS, I was looking at it like, okay, what is going to be a combo that is capable of 1,000 horsepower on kill mode, and I don't care if I'm going to send the rods to the block because I'm on a shoestring budget right now. I'm like, I don't have motion like that.
What was the budget?
The budget was the whole car, engine,
before you got in. Like you already had the car, right?
Yeah, I already had the car. I bought
so what was
the
budget to build the motor?
To build the motor, the budget was
around that time period.
Around $4,000. Around
$4,000. So $4,000.
$4,000 is what I put in the whole thing. So I bought a 4.8 liter LR4 truck motor. It's a Gen 3 motor. And I bought that motor for $500. I probably could have got it for $300 or $200. So those engines are thrown away all the time. So people don't want to do anything with them. And that's why everybody flocks to those motors solely because they're super cheap, because you can pop it and throw another one right back in there and don't really care. But so I bought the motor for $500. I bought a CX Racing single turbo kit for the S14s. I was like $800. I put a precision turbo. It was one of their entry level LS series. So it didn't have flow data on it or anything like that. They'll put flow data on their more expensive turbos, but it was like one of the early entry ones. They didn't have none of the flow data on and the compressor maps on their website. And then it was a stock LS1 intake, some FIC, but it wasn't FIC fuel injector clinic. It was fuel injector connection, which was a little bit cheaper. Remember, at the time I was on a budget. Yeah. So I put like some 1,300 cc injectors in there, and that setup all together, stock pistons, stock crank, stock rods. It just had ARP head studs in it. That whole engine setup together was only like $4 grand, and we dynoed it on baby boost. I'm talking about with a 4.8. It was like 13 or 14 pounds. It made like 670 to the wheels.
Wow.
Which that's an engine I could have popped right there and I wouldn't be in tears. It's just like, okay, cool. It makes 670. Now, later on, we end up building, this was like for the shop, not my personal build, but a similar build to that, but it was in a Catfish Camaro, same F-body 98 to 02 model. And it had a 4.8 in it with a single turbo around the same size on E85. When you turned it up on, not really on kill, but we kind of turned it up, and we made 780 to the wheels on a 4.8, and it still had room to go. Like every knock sensors were cherry, not really pulling timing on there. It's running on E85. So, I mean, you can build a 1,000 horsepower motor I mean, if you're making 800 to 900 wheel through an auto, you're making around 1,000 crank. You can make 1,000 crank LS for right around $4,000 to $5,000 if you're willing to skimp on certain parts and willing to have the opportunity of it could explode on the dyno. Yeah. Which I understand some people just don't want to have that happen.
Right.
Yeah. And especially while not like street racing or anything, like especially if you blow a motor while street racing, now you have the risk of like hurting other people because you can spin out and all that oil goes everywhere.
Right.
Pieces of the rod and block are going on down on the street and stuff.
And tires too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand that, but the LS opened my eyes big time. And that's kind of like the biggest influence for me to like partner with the shop and try to build stuff and like building this truck. This truck is a 2006 Colorado, and the Colorado platform is one that is very overlooked because when people want to go racing, they jump into the S10. So the S10, like the old 80s and 90s square body S10s, and then the later S10s, they're very lightweight. They're a very lightweight truck. So, and they only came in a single cab or like an extended cab.
Okay.
But these came later, and this is like a Brazilian truck. They made them in Brazil first, and then they started bringing them to the United States. And they're very light in comparison to its contemporary. So like the C10 behind you may weigh like 4,900 pounds. Yeah. This truck weighs 36. So, I mean, you have 1,000-pound difference, and in pitting it with all-wheel drive, 416 stroker LS, Holly, shout out to Holly for helping us with the standalone ECU on this thing. I mean, literally, this truck weighs less than a GTR and makes 550 to the wheels. So, I mean, that is, you have to think about it. It's pretty much a 550 wheel horsepower GTR, but in old beat up work truck clothing, which is cool. So at a stoplight, you can just whomp it on people like that, especially down here where most of the stuff, everybody likes Corvettes, Camaros, and a lot of rear wheel drive stuff. So at the light, you'll probably beat me if we're on a prep track in the quarter. You'll probably beat me at the top end. But that whole shot, that 60-foot, it's over with. That's how it is. And that's why I like this truck. It's all the power, big stall, right out the hole like that.
So if you wanted to build an LS, right? Let's say if you wanted to build an LS and your budget wasn't $4,000, let's say your budget was $10,000, right? Mm-hmm. What would you go with the LS platform?
Okay, if it was a $10,000 budget with an LS platform, making, let me see, to balance power and reliability. Okay. First, I would jump.
First of all, is that even possible to balance both?
There's a way of doing it with LSs where you can still keep the budget in play. Okay. So like the first thing I would start off with is you'll try to find a iron block 6.0 Gen 3, which would be like an LQ4, LQ9, or if you can find one, some of these are a little bit rarer, is the LY6, because the LY6 is a 6-liter iron block, but it comes with the LS3 heads. So remember, a lot of people jump to, when they want to do budget builds, they say, oh, you got to jump with a 4.8 or 5.3. That's cool, but you're instantly limited by the head design. You can't use the square port heads, and those flow amazing for the price. Now, you can make a cathedral port outflow a square port if you do like a CNC port and you just go crazy, balls to the wall, casting, like let's say like you get something from like Frankenstein or whatever. Yeah, you can make a cathedral outflow a square port, but when it comes for keeping it in a decent price range, I would jump to the 6.0. You're paying a little bit more for the block, but you're going to be saving money in other areas. So iron block 6.0, Gen 4 crank, piston, and rod. So those are the later ones with the floating wrist pins. Okay. And those are just a little bit beefier and a little bit stronger. Square port, what are the head casting? Like they're like 823s, I believe. 823s, which come on the LS3s. And then a Holley high ram, 2,000 cc injectors, a brushless fuel pump, and you're gonna need to go single turbo with that one. Okay, twin turbo is not gonna fit within that $10,000 budget. So go with like a VS Racing, because it's a budget option that is still decently reliable. VS Racing 80 mil, that setup should at least touch 900 rear wheel horsepower, which is 1,000 crank.
What chassis?
Chassis, pretty much anything. I would throw it in like in that C10. I'll throw one in the Colorado.
At that point, you're pretty much looking for what's lighter.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's why I picked, whenever I built my car, I built it on the S14 because the S14 was much lighter than the Catfish or the Trans Am that I had. So it's like it was a better chassis to make fast and make lightweight.
Right.
And that whole setup, what I just talked about, should be at least like you can get around that for around $8,000. I would say way less than 10. Now for the price, you have to think about the Coyote. If I want to make 900 rear-wheel horsepower with a Coyote, the Gen 3, you can't find a complete Gen 3 engine for less than like $7,000. So you're already maxing out that budget. You're going to have to go Gen 2, which Gen 2 is like the best bang for your buck budget. Gen 1s, you're going to need to pop it open and do connecting rods if you want to get 900 rear-wheel horsepower.
Right.
So at that point, if you go with a Gen 1, you throw like a piston and rod combo in there, you're probably at $5,000 already. Then what turbo kit is affordable within that range? You have to go with the On3 turbo kit, and then oil pump gears. You don't have to really do anything on the induction side through the stock intake manifold. You'd be able to make that amount of power just boosting fuel at that point. You don't have to do the cams and stuff like that like you have to do on the LS. But overall, you get to see that now we're at the limits. If not, we're past $10,000 at this point. Yeah. So
it's a big difference in Coyote and LS.
Yeah,
it really is price-wise, yeah.
And that's the thing, like whenever people have like the Coyote versus LS debate, they always talk about power and volumetric efficiency, and I get that. The Coyote is more volumetric efficient, so essentially for every pound of boost, you're gonna make more power better in the long term for every pound of boost on a Coyote than you will on the LS, but you can't deny the cost factor and how easy it is to build the LS from a standpoint of knowledge and a standpoint of price. It's just super easy to build. It's much cheaper, and it will still last with the proper tuning.
Right.
Everybody forgets the tuning part. It's always like, oh, we're just going to put all these parts together and get Bubba or one of my buddies to go tune it, and then it pops, and they're like, oh, LS is shit. Like, no, the tuner just didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And I would say Coyotes are even more like worse on this because, I mean, if the tuner doesn't know, like Coyotes have like 20 something VE tables. Like they have so crazy amount of stuff on there. So essentially, like with Coyotes, like if the tuner isn't on point and knowing everything that's going on with that engine, those engines can pop real quick. And now you have the cost associated because those aren't cheap engines. Dual overhead cam engines are just going to be more expensive, and essentially once that happens, you're going to have a lawyer at your door. Like you have lawyers going to be knocking when you be popping people's Coyotes. LS is somebody pops a $500 junkyard motor, like, oh, just throw another one in there. Right. Like that's the whole thing. Like you can get away with being a crappy tuner in the LS world. Coyote tuner and being a crappy tuner with Coyotes, you're going out. I mean, you're going to jail, homie. You're going to jail.
You're cooked.
Yeah, you're going to jail, homie.
So, do you feel like a lot of people with the LS platform are mostly because they're such on a budget that they frequently have issues if they don't have the right tuner? Yeah, and I find that you'll find more variance between tuner skill in the LS community than you find in the Coyote community. If like right now, if we said, okay, I need a tune for my twin turbo GT350 head, 5.2 Predator block, race car Coyote base platform. First people we're going to be talking about Lund Racing, Palm Beach Dyno, Schumacher, the tune guy. There's a lot of people that tune those to a high degree. And for example, with like Lund, their program is so intense on the money side where they're developing these base maps where they'll buy a vehicle, install a slew of parts, create a whole bunch of base maps, and then send those out to customers and do revisions on those. We don't have that in the LS community because there's so many variants. There's the LS 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 7, 9, and then the LSA, and then the LQ4, LQ9, all these different LS variants. It's hard to build base maps for every single one with every single cam, every single head option. So essentially when it comes to the LS side, more people are just willing to just go with just any shop, anybody, any tuner, really. Like, oh, you know how to tune LSs? Yeah. So even within the LS and LT community, there's a huge difference of tuner skill. Like if you can tune a Gen 3 LS, like the early LSs that came up from like 99 to 2007, if you can tune a Gen 3 LS, that is the entry level point.
Now, that tuning knowledge won't carry to Gen 4. So the 07 to 2013 LSs, that tuning knowledge is more complicated. It's more torque model based. It's not pure torque model, but there's a lot of torque management stuff in there. And the 6L80 has a lot more maps you have to tune. So it becomes a little bit more complicated. Then once you get to LTs, like the 2014, I guess 2015 and up, once you get into LTs, unless you really know everything you're doing with like the virtual torque tables, the virtual VE, like you can really have an engine that like you'll go on full throttle with it, it starts pulling the throttle blade back because the torque tables aren't right.
Right.
And all that stuff is all tied in with the transmission. So the transmission sometimes on one shift, it's smooth as and some other time it may flare. Like sometimes, oh my bad.
No, you're good.
Yeah, but sometimes I'll see that like I can like hear somebody like they'll post a pool of them doing like a C7 Z06 with an LT4 in there and some rinky-dink tuner. I can hear it. Like you can hear each shift, and I'm like, dude, this thing is flaring like crazy. This transmission is only going to last like 20 miles, and it's literally such a difference between all those generations of LSs that's why I'm very hard on like a tuner that is very platform specific. Those are usually the tuners I like. Just like certain people that are very knowledgeable in a certain side of like the engine, like for example, the guy from Aftermarket Industries with
Julian, shout out to Julian.
He's super knowledgeable when it comes to fuel systems, and that's the whole thing. Like if you dedicate all your time to a certain aspect of it, you become the best, and you become literally the guru of that.
Right.
So if you're dedicated to Gen 3 LSs, just stick with that. Gen 4 LSs, stick with that. LTs, definitely stick with that, because if you go from the Gen 3 world and you want to jump into the Gen 5 LS LT motors, that's a big learning curve. And you really, the people that are doing it good, like GPI, who else? Prey Performance, and there's other people out there like RPM and tuners. Like those people, they have the sauce, and they're not just going to give the sauce away on a YouTube video. Like you can find, you can learn how to tune a Gen 3 LS just from YouTube videos. There's tons of YouTube Academy out there doing that. Even Gen 4 LSs, LTs, you're very hard pressed because it took so much blowing people's vehicles up. That like they're not going to give that information away for free. So they're just going to safeguard. I get it. It's a business, but
it kind of sucks because it does make sense. There are so many different variations that you do have to have those tuners who are working with those specific platforms. So it does become difficult to find the right tuner. And also, especially for the LS platform, like even for me, I'm not saying I'm having a hard time finding people to interview on the LS side, but where I'm from in my area, people have LSs, but there is no shop that it's just like you go to and it's like, oh, these are the guys you go to for LS stuff. You could find that for the Coyote.
Yeah, you can find that for Coyote, and there's specific tuners where you'll just follow a certain tuner. Yeah, like there's like a couple tuners in like Houston where any LS build you just purely just go to that tuner for. But like a tuning company that just tunes LSs is just very hard. There's no Lund racing in the LS side. So that's just how the market is. And I really feel like even if there was, they wouldn't want to pay the price. Like a lot of people, you have to realize that a lot of the tuning businesses that are like LS based are purely based on HB tuners. So if you want to tune a Gen 3 LS, you spend 2 credits, which is $100 with HB tuners, and then you unlock a Gen 3 PCM. So the other cost of the tuning is just purely associated with the tuner going in there and calibrating and doing this stuff. Right. So since there's not like a set forward like cost, a lot of times people tend to tune a lot of Gen 3s because they can kind of undercut a lot of people. Like, hey, send it to my buddy, he'll do it for $200. Like, what is he doing for $200? He's doing a lot of screwed up stuff in your PCM, which will cause your transmission to go bad. I mean, you can literally blow a naturally aspirated LS, one of the most reliable engines on the planet, which is purely bad tuning. I mean, you can destroy that engine, like mechanical, like rods come out the bottom of the block, like with just crazy. Screwing up a couple cells in the VE table and things like that. Literally, tuning is that sensitive, and just people just don't understand that.
That is crazy. So on naturally aspirated side, right? Yeah, wouldn't be ideal to kind of, I guess, put money into a NA Coyote, right? Yeah. So can you explain why NA for NA on the LS to Coyote side, why it would be more beneficial to go with the LS NA rather than a Coyote NA?
So, like, when it comes to a solid NA build, the LS and LT is going to be king purely based off how the block design is.
Okay.
Like LSs and LTs have a 120 millimeter bore spacing, which means you can get more cylinder volume out of those blocks versus a Coyote, which is still based on the modular architecture, which is 100 millimeters or 110 or 100 millimeters. So it's a smaller spacing between the bores, so you can only bore it out so much before you start to encroach on the next cylinder.
Right.
So you can bore these LSs out to 4.125, a LS7, 427 cubic inches, 7 liters. You do a huge cam, some CMC ported heads, a Holley high ram. You're making 700 wheel horsepower naturally aspirated. You're just not going to touch that with a Coyote because you can't get the volume out of that. You can maybe go to 5.2 with a Voodoo, and then after that, do a Plasma Man intake or like some super hot rod cams, like some Comp Cam Stage 3 NAs.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's still only going to be able to suck in as so much air. With even if volumetric efficiency is 100%, you're only squeezing in at 100%, 5.2 liters out of 5.2 liters. If an LS is 90% efficient, I mean, out of 7 liters, it's still 6.8 liters or 6.7 liters. So you're still just moving a much larger mass of air.
Right.
And you're just not going to beat that. Now, when it comes to boost, completely different conversation.
Okay.
When it comes to twin turbo supercharged, I'm Coyote. Anything when it deals to boost, Coyote all the way is the best to, let's say, 1,500 wheel. Then after that, you start getting to aftermarket blocks. Like with LSs, and that kind of takes over the conversation again. It flip-flops with me a lot. But like we're talking like street car type stuff.
Yeah.
But
how much of that is impacted by head flow though? Because the Coyote heads do obviously flow well. But what if you get a very good flowing LS head? There's only so much air you can put into a motor through a head.
Exactly. Yeah.
How much of that would make a difference on the turbocharged side?
On the turbocharged side is going to make that engine like a lot of times you'll see on like if you look at a VE table and where the engine is most efficient at, you start adding more airflow, bigger, hotter cams. I mean, the only reason to upgrade the head is previously you want to have a much hotter, higher duration cam, some lower lobe separation angle to get some low end grunt. And then if you start adding a very, very high flow head into that, you're going to start moving the power on that map more to the right, where you're making your efficiencies higher in your RPM band. Basically, when it comes to an engine, like a naturally aspirated engine, the engine is only correct in one spot, at peak torque. At peak torque is where the size of the valves, the intake runners, the throttle body, all that is correct. Below that, the engine isn't spinning fast enough to really take advantage of that, and above that, the engine is moving too quickly, it's taking those gulps too fast. So you use different things to kind of adjust it. That's why with boost on Coyotes, you have the variable valve timing, like whatever they call the TI VCT, the twin independent variable cam timing. So when you advance the intake timing, especially low down, you get more volumetric efficiency, more cylinder pressure, and you spool those turbos faster. And then also when it comes to the high end, being a dual overhead cam engine with dual overhead cam engines just have a more precise valve actuation. So you have the cam on top, you have the lobe of the cam, and then you have the finger follower right on top of the valve.
Versus like a pushrod.
Versus a pushrod where it has to go through the whole block, and even the pushrod itself under high speed, if you look at a high-speed camera, the pushrod doesn't stay perfectly straight. It actually bends during its actuation, so you actually lose a little bit of lift. So at high RPM, a dual overhead cam Coyote, you're just not going to beat it, and especially with boost, it's just one of those engines that's just almost impossible to beat because they built really the perfect boost motor. It's two Honda K25s, pretty much. That's really what it is. It's two Honda K25s molded together at the crankshaft. That's all it is, bro.
This episode of the Street Alpha Podcast is brought to you by Race Motive. Bring your car from the streets to the track at Race Motive Racing events in 2024. From Pocono Raceway, Maryland International Raceway, New Jersey Motorsports Park, and new this year, Maple Grove Raceway, Race Motive brings you top-tier roll racing events. Their Olympic-style grading system ensures precise measurements for fair competition. From the high-friction NASCAR surface at Pocono to fully prepped drag strips, every race promises excitement and fairness. So bring yourself and your car and use Street Alpha Pod for 10% off all tickets, whether you spectate or race at racemotive.com. Don't miss your chance to race with the best. Yeah. No. So do you think that, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but what if the Coyote had a pushrod setup with the design of the engine itself?
If the Coyote had a pushrod design, it would probably be very, very bad, just because with the bore spacing it has, you can't get displacement out of it. The advantage of LSs and Hemis in general is that the bore spacing allows you to get a lot of volume out of that engine. So if you stick with something that compact and with a pushrod, it'll just be a very, very bad pushrod. It'll basically turn into the small block Ford, like a 302 small block Ford. Those
I was going to say, what about small block?
Yeah, those engines were good for the time, but once you get to like the competitive 700,000-800,000 horsepower, you have to go with the aftermarket block, because they break blocks all the time. They crack them right down the middle.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that I'm so glad that's not a pushrod engine. Yeah.
So when it comes to camshafts, right, on let's say on the LS, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you kind of try to implement in all of your builds across the board? Because there's so many different variations with camshafts.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to have Greg from GSC kind of explain that next week on the episode, because he's literally designing camshafts.
Absolutely.
But from your experience and your builds,
for the cars that I've typically messed with, like all my Trans Am, my 240SX, like first off, the cam is going to tell the engine where to make peak torque at. So what you have to do is you have to understand initially, like, what is this motor going to be? Is it going to be a naturally aspirated engine? Is it going to be a turbo engine? Is it going to be a supercharged engine? And then how aggressive do you want that? Because the more aggressive you make it, it's just going to move the power band more to the right. So everything down low is going to be less efficient. If you ever go to like tuning the VE table of a cammed engine versus a stock engine, you'll typically see that the peak torque is moved higher, and it's less efficient at lower RPM than stock. So you have to pull fuel from the bottom end and add that fuel at the top end. So it's just moving the efficiencies around pretty much. But basically you want more duration. More duration helps the valve stay open longer.
Right.
Get a larger, bigger gulp of air is going to move that peak torque higher in the RPM range, and then also more lift, the valve moving off of the seat more, it just helps it breathe much better. And then the lobe separation angle is specific, especially where if, like, depends on the application. Like if it's a truck, I want it to scavenge real well at the mid-range, so I do a tighter LSA, so a lower number.
Okay.
And then if I want it to be like a high RPM engine, I'll probably open up the LSA a little bit wider. Because if you see, like, with boosted factory applications in the LS world, like the LS9 in the Corvette ZR1 has a super wide LSA. They don't want to bleed boost with the overlap.
Okay.
And also they want that thing to rev much higher. But in a truck, I don't want it to rev high. I want it to make all its power in the mid-range, probably right when the stall converter kicks in. So I'll go with tighter lobe separation angle.
Right. Okay.
Other than that, there's like certain boost versus NA specific stuff. Like typically on a boost cam, like a supercharged or turbo cam, you'll see more duration on the exhaust side, or like sometimes a little bit more lift on the exhaust side than you would see on the naturally aspirated cam equivalent. Okay. Just because you're forcing air into the engine and it's artificially aspirated at that point. So you need to evacuate those extra spent gases. So you're just getting rid of some of the pumping losses that you normally would encounter if you put just an NA cam in there. So I mean, there's small stuff. I mean, a camshaft professional or guru could easily explain it much better than I could. 100%. But it's just like, that's just the way that
for you, like personally, like if you were building a motor, what would you what are some of the things you look for? Because I know you're big into like specs, and obviously you're not just going to a shop and saying, hey, I need my car to make 1,000, so figure it out.
Exactly, And one thing too, a lot of people forget, like, a lot of these camshaft companies have like hotlines of just number like professionals behind on call. So like you can either do that, like call Cam Motion or call Brian Tooley Racing, call Texas Speeds. Shout out Texas Speed for helping us with this truck. But that's the whole thing, like call the professionals in the industry. And also custom grinds. Tell them, hey, this is the specific application I'm looking for. I'm looking for, let's say, 2007 Silverado going twin turbo with a 6.2 liter LS3, and I want it to drive good on the low end, and I still want to be able to tow some stuff, but then still have some top end availability with that. Yeah, that camshaft isn't going to make the most maximum amount of power, but they'll be able to spec something right within the range to kind of help all your needs. You can only get one or the other.
Right.
Now, Coyotes, you can get almost both scenarios because you have variable cam timing.
Right.
But with most of the older LSs, you don't have that. They had that in some of the later LS. They added variable valve timing, but it's not twin independent like a Coyote.
Right.
So where you add one efficiency on the intake side, you lose the efficiency on the exhaust side because it's one big cam.
Right.
So if you, as you advance or retarded, you're helping one side and you're screwing over another. This one has independent, so you can help one side and not screw over the other.
Right.
So
you think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people shy away from the LS because of that one cam? There's only so much you can do with one cam. I think the one cam design is why people go to it because it's simpler. Because this is the thing. Anytime, and I used to have this mindset that, and you'll see this in the LS community a lot, is why don't you ask them a question? Why don't you like Coyotes? First thing they're gonna say is, oh, it has 4 cams, the timing chains, oil pump gears. Like oil pump gears is
the go-to thing. And the counter to that is every LS needs lifters once in its life.
Okay.
Because they always blow lifters from the factory. Like they only last like 20 minutes. But on the Coyotes, the whole, like they'll typically take off the front cover of it, and you'll see all the timing chains, all the variable valve timing actuators and stuff. And like, oh, this looks so complicated. I just like my LSs. The LSs have a timing chain. You have a cam gear, a crank gear, and then you line it up. And once you do that, you put the cam gear and crank gear on. Boom, you timed your LS. This is just a little bit more complicated. You may take a couple more tools and a little bit more procedure, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it's just people just see an added level of complication and they think that makes it inferior, but that complication helps make it superior in certain, and people always forget about that. Like that variable cam timing does help a lot when it comes to street driving.
Right. So now you mentioned earlier that if you, if you had an option to go with like a Honda, it would have been like a K series, right? Yeah. Budget wise.
Absolutely.
And this is pretty similar to that. I know
that's basically 2 K series made it together.
Right.
So for me, like the K series, when I first like really started to dive into it, that probably would have been swapped into my S14 because you can make a crazy amount of it. It doesn't make any sense of like how much airflow and how much power you can make out of such a small package. It's a very, very compact package. You do like a K24 block, K28 head. I mean, at the point, even up to a 600 wheel, don't even need to sleeve it. Like the old B series, like a B18, B20, like, you're going to need to sleeve that motor. You're going to have to put some sleeves in there. The oil pumps are on point. They don't really reach cavitation until like 8,500 or like 9,000 RPM. So you can get some RPM out of them. It's just, for me, like the K series is the motor to boost. And it's still almost like the LS where you have that, you can mix generations around.
Right. It's
still budget friendly. Like K series haven't gotten like to the 2J level yet. 2Js are like unobtainium at this point.
Right.
And RBs especially.
Yeah.
But I think the K series is like, I feel like if you're watching this video and you're about to swap something into like a import and you want to go LS, look at K series. Do some research for tonight. Do some research. You're probably going to see that it may be a better opportunity and a better platform to jump into.
For your pockets.
Yeah, for your pockets at least. Yeah.
Right, 100%.
K series, I love those motors.
So now a lot of the V8s are more of the popular brands, right? Let's say if you can't afford a V8 and you have a V6. What are some of the things that you can achieve with the V6 if you're looking to, to get into a V6? So let's say for like an Ecoboost or something like that.
So with the Ecoboost, you can get those in like the F-150s and like some of their daily driven SUVs and stuff like that.
Okay.
One of the best things to ever happen with like the EPA cracking down on stuff and like emissions is they have to make these engines much smaller and they have to be turbocharged. Okay. And they build in a lot of room at the top end with these turbos. So especially like a bigger turbo naturally runs cooler than a smaller turbo. And then also the way that they tune the power bands of these engines, they'll close the wastegates, ramp in a whole bunch of boosts real early to kind of get the torque up very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And then they'll back it down. Now, there's still more space of turbo above that. They'll typically back it down to make the torque as flat as possible. And as torque naturally starts to curve, start to taper down, they'll add more boost into it to kind of level it off.
Is that for drivability more so?
Basically for drivability, you don't want to feel an engine do this. Like if you're being pulled back in the seat and you're starting to lay over like that.
Right.
You want a consistent pull and shift and a consistent pull like that. So it is a drivability thing. But like the EcoBoost engines, like all this preconceived stuff, like the engine has a lot of upside room. So we tuned a F-150 power boost. We didn't tune it, but we dynoed it. But so it was tuned by Livernois Racing, and then we put some spray on top. This engine went from like a bone stock engine that makes what, like 490 and like 550 torque or whatever the power boosts make. At the wheels, tune only, it made in the 560 range and 600 torque. And then on spray, this engine it's a 3.5 liter EcoBoost with like some little extra little battery system on there. It's not like a Tesla or anything. It's like it runs off the transmission. But this engine ends up making, like, at its final dyno, 620 and 700 torque. Like, this engine is making steam, and it's a little 3.5 liter EcoBoost. This engine is like,
he said, I love how he says little.
Yeah, it's a little 3.5, dude. Yeah.
I'm used to like 3.0s to, you know.
It's a little 3.5 making 700 torque. Like, bro, like this is like diesel torque numbers like 10 years ago. Yeah. Like a Duramax LLY or like a LML or something like that. They make like 760, 780 torque. Like this thing is making 700 torque out of a 3.5 liter twin turbo engine. It's crazy. But like, I like anything factory turbocharged that has upside to it. Yeah, I like those motors. It's like, other than sound, the 3.5 EcoBoost isn't a bad engine. I mean, when it first introduced, everybody was like, "Oh, they're putting a small engine with turbos. It's going to be stressed more when it comes to towing." And like, yeah, we get that, but at the end of the day,
that's true.
I slap a little piggyback or slap a little flash tune, I add 50 horsepower and 100 torque that quickly. Yeah. With an LS or like any type of traditional small block or a Hemi, you have to do cams, have to do heads, have to do intake. You really can't just bolt on like 100 torque. Like 100 torque, bolt on with a naturally aspirated engine, you're doing internal work on that. Right. So it's just, I used to have my mindset like that. Like, cause that's how I grew up, all off the small block stuff. So once the turbo engines like come around, like, this is stupid easy. Being easy means it's a well-designed engine. So people think since it's easy, it's like, oh, I built my horsepower. It's like the built versus bought debate. I hate that debate because it's like, if you buy horsepower or you buy an engine that can efficiently take advantage of horsepower, since it's not difficult, some people just don't like it. And I like the ease of it. If it's easy to get to 1,000 wheel horsepower, boosting fuel with a Coyote, much easier than it is with an LS. Technically, in my opinion, that would make that engine better because I can achieve that goal much quicker. It's very, very, very quick turnaround.
And minimal mods too, I'm assuming.
Minimal mods, yeah. And that's the whole thing. Less things to go wrong.
Right.
So.
Right. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So with the EcoBoost, right?
Yeah.
You made you said you made 600?
Yeah. So it made 620 horsepower at the final run. It made 620 and 700 torque.
So, and that was on spray?
That was on spray, yeah. It was on
spray.
I forgot what shot it was. Like a 75 shot. So, just to cool down the intake charge.
So people, you said before, people always complain about like, oh, it's a truck, I'm going to have issues towing it. Do you feel like a lot of these trucks are getting into that range where it's like, or that kind of area where it's like a truck is for, I don't want to say it's for towing, but you know, you want to have the space to do things with it and make it more, it's functional. You don't want to have it functional. So when you have a V6 or you have a smaller displacement motor in your car, right? Yeah. Does it take away from the functionality of it being a truck?
Not really, because at the end of the day, it's all dependent on boost pressure. Like if I'm running 25 pounds of boost at 2,000, let's say 2,800, 3,000 RPM at peak torque, it's making 500 or 600 pound-feet of torque down there. Yeah. I'm not sacrificing towing, especially. Remember, Chevrolet still sells a naturally aspirated 5.3 and 6.2 in their trucks. These trucks max make 400 torque. Yeah. So 3.5 EcoBoost making 600. Yeah, is it being stressed more? Yeah, from a horsepower per liter or torque per liter perspective, yes. But if it's built for that specifically, if you look at the internals, has forged connecting rods, forged pistons, yeah, that engine technically can withstand that type of pressure. Right. And it has all the safeguards built in. They have knock sensors that knows when you're not putting good fuel in it. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's a negative. The only negative I would find is the sound debate. Yeah, a 3.5 EcoBoost doesn't sound very, very good. Yeah. Like certain VQs, like some of the V6 engines from Nissan, sound like trumpets. Yeah. Now, I mean, you can make power with them. You saw what Admin is doing with those
shout out to Admin
VQs.
too.
Man, the stuff they're doing with that stuff is like bro, that's crazy. Like, I've never thought I would see the time where an unopened VQ37 is running like deep 60 to 130 times unopened. Like,
even so I have a CD009 transmission.
Okay, yeah,
stock
6-speed. Yeah,
you can make power on those.
Yeah, and they use those as swap transmissions for 2Js all the time, making 700-800 horsepower. They're rolling those. They'll do supercharged LSs behind them.
That's a pretty well built platform.
So yeah, then what I'm saying is like almost the engine configuration, like the V6s, the turbo inline 4s. I don't really find like where there's like infighting where one is technically better than the other. Yeah. If we want to get technical on that, the best engine configuration is an inline 6. From primary, secondary balance, those engines are perfectly balanced. That's why Cummins are inline 6. That's why the B58s, the S58s. I mean, BMW is one of the engineering, like the most hardcore engineering companies on the planet when it comes to design and stuff. So if they build it a certain way, there's a reason behind it. They don't just happen to fall onto inline 6s for everything.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot there that is good. And my whole introduction to the BMW side was when I had my Trans Am making 400 wheel horsepower, got a big old hog ass cam in there, nitrous spray on it. I thought I had the baddest car in Lafayette pretty much. And one of my buddies, he had a gray 335i with like a piggyback tuner on there and like some charge pipes, like a very, very simple setup like that. And I knew it wasn't the M3 because I knew the M3 at the time had the V8 in it. So I was like, the V8 would be a good challenge for me. But he has a 6-cylinder BMW. I'm going to gap this fool. But it ended up turning. I was really humbled that day because we did like a 50 roll from like a 50 to like 140, and he put two and a half cars on me. I still have the video on YouTube. If you want to see it. So yeah, like at that point I was like, okay, BMW is onto something because this isn't a V8. Like I thought if it's not the V8 S65 or like whatever,
which isn't even really fast on it.
Yeah, or even like the V10 M5s, like amazing. The E60 M5s. I thought like, oh, if it's not like the high trim M motorsport models, they're not fast.
Right.
Bullshit. Like once the B58 340i came out with xDrive, I think those are just the go-to BMWs in my opinion.
They do work though, man.
Yeah, you get like an F30 340i. You can find one at one of them buy here, pay here lots. Yeah, 15% interest. You're gonna get off the lot. You're gonna get off like You may not be able to afford those $800 payments down the road, but you're gonna get one. Yeah, and then do the downpipe tune, get the email tune, and it's literally it's a good runner off the block. Like my 400 horsepower. 400 wheel horsepower Trans Am, and I sold it before really the B58 started to get popular. Yeah, I would have got spanked by all of them. That's the whole thing. It's bad to even think about that, but like that engine and that car combination is so potent for what it is. Right. And when you really explore it, like the B58s now, like those things are hitting 1500 wheel. Like when I'm talking about like race blocks at that point, like 100%. The whole racing
like
program,
all Visconti, motors, stroker, all that stuff. Yeah, I
remember when they first came out, people like, "Is this the new 2J?" And everybody like, "No, it's not the new 2J." I'm like, how quickly it has taken off. Right. I mean, what is it? What is the B58 going to be in the next 20 years? I mean, if we give it the same development time as a 2J, like,
I think there's people that argue that there's only so much you can push an aluminum cast too, and I feel like that was one of the arguments that somebody had. I don't know who it was. I can't remember the conversation. I have conversations about this stuff all the time off camera, but people feel like the limitation might be the aluminum.
Could be. Well, see, when I looked at AMS and seeing what they do on the VR platform, some of their billet blocks that's billet aluminum. Yeah, and those things run. I'm like 2,000 some horse.
They do.
They up there. So it's just, I don't know. I just feel like every single time there's like a roadblock, you just give it time and just some deep pocketed individual to explore that. Yeah, there's a breakthrough somewhere in there. Right. So maybe the B58 can possibly go to 2,000 wheel.
I think keeping that head on the bottom
clamping
end,
force of it. Yeah,
and then also the transmission. I feel like if they can get better with the transmission in terms of like the tuning as well, that's what's going to skyrocket because that transmission is obviously one of the key factors into why those cars are fast as well. Oh, yeah, so I always say that, but it's the truth. Like you put a ZF on, you put that on anything, it's gonna go.
And that's the crazy thing about it is like if you think about the GTR and its transmission, how expensive it is versus what it can like hold in factory power, like A Zf8 is a better transmission technically than the Borg Warner GR6. Like with GTR owners, right around the 650, 700 wheel torque range, you got to change the connecting rods because they make them very, very small rods in those VRs for windage, pretty much. And you want an engine that doesn't have a lot of momentum in the rotating assembly, so you can rev it up quick because it's a dual clutch transmission. You have to be able to rev up and down very, very quickly. And essentially, this transmission is very expensive. It's like $22,000 for a GR6. Super
expensive.
But at the same torque number that the connecting rods go bad, the transmission goes bad at the same time. Like the crossover between the clutches, between doing the dual clutch operation, it'll start slipping and just causing nothing but havoc inside of those transmissions. And the Zf8s, I see people push Zf8s in stock form to like 800, 900 wheel, and like just clicking off shifts. Just you'll hear that the torque management like cutting and like the DSG farts in the back. It's not DSGs, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, the brap. The brap.
I don't even like that sound.
And it just be.
But it goes.
And they roll. That's the whole thing. So it's just like seeing that on the GTR platform. What would the GTR platform have been if, let's say, those had a Zf8 automatic rather than a GR6 dual clutch? And I think that probably would have pushed that platform more because it would have been easier and a little bit cheaper to go faster, so you would put more money in different areas.
Well, the ZF built on the Supra. Well, you're probably talking about like a ZF from like maybe like a Hellcat or something.
Yeah, like 8 HP.
Supra 8 HP 51, I think it is.
Okay.
But that one's only good for like I think it's 600 or 700 torque maybe.
Okay.
But when you build them, you're getting up to like $20,000.
Yeah.
For like a fully built.
The pure solutions.
Yeah, the pure, which is kind of crazy though. Like you can get on an RB side, you can get like a sequential, like an album sequential for like 20,000 and being sequential. But like then it's like, damn, 20,000 for a transmission out of $100,000 that you're going to put into that car. That's like almost a quarter of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's just a transmission. That's just the transmission to make it go. And to withstand the power.
But I'm talking about at the highest level though.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know. Like one of my buddies, Buck Lemoyne, he has a 2JZ based Supra build that he has. It's pretty much a drag car. And like his transmission, I mean, when he tells me about the parts in it, and then when I go like look it up, like it's a $20,000 transmission, and then I believe it's a
PPG or dog box?
No, it's a drag racing, like a Turbo 400 or like a Power Glide.
TH400.
Yeah, okay, even like the simplistic transmissions, the old school Power Glides and Turbo 400s. When it comes to those billet converters, every hard part inside of those transmissions made out of billet, all this and that. Transmission is easy to get to 20 to 30 G's. And it's a 3-speed. And sometimes it's a 3-speed converted into a 2-speed.
Right.
And they're like $20,000. Like, bro, you're paying $10,000 per gear.
But it goes.
It holds the power. His car makes 2,500 horsepower. So at that point, you're gonna spend that money.
That's crazy. So out of all the cars, right, that we kind of basically spoke about, what do you think are like the best cars out of any other platform?
We're talking about just if I'm talking about an all-out platform on the street, that is the best. I don't care about money. I don't care about configuration. It's just the best. Would either be, and that's what everybody are doing now, and that's what's very about, is the Huracan R8 GTR.
Oh, you talking about up there?
Yeah, I'm talking about up there. Yeah, okay. Yeah. We're just talking about overall what they can do on the street is just unmatched. You're not gonna beat that with your little budget Fox body turbo LS build.
Yeah,
you're not gonna be doing 2.2 second 60 to 130s on the street. Now at the track you can probably pull it off because you got the traction. It's a prep surface. If you go balls to the wall, you probably can do it. But I'm talking about on the street, absolutely not. Now for me, like in my range of like proper street car, because the street car is so loosely used that a 3,000 horsepower twin turbo Huracan isn't a street car, because to achieve that levels you're going into these billet blocks and doing all type of stuff. You're just not getting to the point where that's going to be a viable street car to use.
Right.
But like for me, a street car ranges between 700 wheel to 1,000 wheel when we're talking about like a high horsepower street car. Best platforms I would say is the S550 Mustang. So the 2015 to 2021 Mustang GT 5.0. What you can do for, I say like solid a 50G build. I mean, you can run 9s with it. A 9-second 50G build. Now
S550.
S550. Yeah.
What about the Coyote though? I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What about the F-150 Coyote?
Yeah. The F-150 you're gonna pay a little bit more for the F1. I mean, the F-150s typically cost a little bit more than the Mustangs. Like once you completely do the whole build, because if you're gonna build a Coyote, you're gonna make sure it's gonna be the 4x4 one. So you want to do axles. Now you got to worry about like not like breaking stuff on the whole entire package.
Yeah.
But and then also when it comes to like kits and stuff like that, the Mustang community is always built first, and then everything from there is then transmuted into the F-150 side because they share the same engines.
Right,
so it's like it's harder to get those trucks faster, but they can be fast. I would say like as a stoplight racer, not a road racer, but like a dig racer, that truck is basically unbeatable on the street, at least. From dig race, if we were to build a high level performer single cab F-150 2018 or 2020 5.0 10-speed all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and build it up to like its max potential, there's not really anything on the street that can touch it on an unprepped street surface. Unprepped street surface. Like from a dig, you're not beating that truck. Now, if it's like the pad and you're lighting the street on fire, yeah, then like a Fox Body Turbo LS build or something else can probably match its launch. But I'm talking about on an unprepped street, you're just not beating that truck at all. That's to me like that is the dig king right now. Now, roll racing, I'll say the Mustangs and certain vet builds. Certain vets like the C6 ZR1, you can get into the mid 360 to 130s with like I would say not a max effort build. Like
on a roll race, you're talking about?
On a roll racing,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roll racing, it's hard to beat C6 ZR1s and Gen 5 Vipers. Those are
Vipers, yeah.
Vipers, yeah. Absolutely. Like a twin turbo Infomoto or Calvo build, 2,500 horsepower, sequential, you got traction control, boost by gear, race fuel, like, and then also if you have like the Viper ACR with the extreme package, you have the Aero. So at 60 miles an hour, it's already pushing down on the rear axle. I'm like, bro, like that is a setup that is almost made for roll racing.
Right.
You'll typically see that some of the best roll racing cars start as track monsters. Viper ACR, Huracan, Performante, GTR Nismos. I mean, these are all like track built cars that were designed for the track.
Right.
And when it comes to roll racing, you need traction and need aerodynamics at high speed. And that's really where those cars kind of they have it dialed. And to me, like that is going to be like the high level build. Hopefully if the YouTube channel ever takes off, we're going to have a twin turbo Huracan on there. But
nah, you'll get there for sure.
With one of these days.
The views you pulling in, bro, you'll get there for sure.
If I keep on doing it, yeah, one day.
So there's people that maybe watch and maybe they want to get into a car. They're young, just got out of school or whatever. They're looking to save up some money, get a car. So what do you think would be something that somebody should look for if they want to get into a platform and to what to stay away from? So,
I mean, I would stay away from like the non-performance like versions of European cars.
Okay.
Like, so like a lot of people when they want, I want to get my first car, I want to get into a car and then slowly build it up over time. Let's say they starting to get an inkling of performance. A lot of times is, okay, the E46 M3 is like a decently affordable, but it's still $20,000 for a decent example. So a lot of times the people trying to go down the list and like, well, let me just get a 328i and build it up to that. You're just gonna waste all your money building a 328i. Same thing with like a AMG, like a C63, a W204 C63. Oh, I can't afford that right now. Let me jump into a C300 and then over time build it up. You're not gonna get it to the C63. They're not built on the same assembly. Like it's a completely different car, just with similar body cladding on it. So I think like a lot of people jump into the European side and they want those performance cars, but you can't swing it yet, so they want to get the lesser cars, and it doesn't work for the older stuff. Now the newer stuff, if you don't want a F80 M3, a F30 340i, you can tune that to be just as fast, if not faster. Same thing with the G80s and the G30s or whatever. It's like you can build that B58 quicker or as quick as the M cars, but it's just all the older, like let's say like the mid 2000s BMWs or like Audis and Mercedes. I wouldn't touch that unless it's like the AMG, the M model, or like the RS model or S model of the Audis. I mean, other than that, just stay away from those. Those are just nightmares waiting. On the American side, platform I would stay away from.
What about Subarus, like the WRXs instead of the STIs?
Yeah,
but just in general, like
the
how do you feel about those?
Yeah, for me, like I like the idea of them. but it's like I've never seen a build like I have like buddies that have WRX STIs. I've never seen anybody with a modified one that was like just decently reliable. They're always in the shop, always breaking, something's always happening, and whenever finally everything goes right, they're like, okay, it's all working, let me sell it and get rid of it and jump into something else. Like they're always like.
That's true though. When they finally get it working, it's like, damn, bro, you put all this time
exactly
around.
And there's a reason for that. And that's
true.
the main thing too. Like I just never had any experience with it. Now my knowledge only goes so far. Like I'm not really deep into Subarus, so I guess a Subaru expert can easily chime in on something like that.
Yeah.
But it's just like for me, in my personal experience, I've never seen anybody like fast on the street, consistent on the street, and reliable on the street with a Subaru based platform. Now we have a Subaru based platform down here, one of the GT86s, but we took the flat 4 out of it and threw an LS in it, and the car is dumb reliable, and it burns the tires till 70 miles an hour, and it's just a basic engine build, and that's like it makes it a little bit more fun. But I just don't have the experience and knowledge to really chime in on Subarus like as I can on like a Coyote or LS. So.
And on the American side?
On the American side, the platform I would stay away from, like the earlier F bodies. So like the 1993 to 1997, because those have like a weird engine, like a LT1. So this is like the original LT1. Like the LT1 everybody talks about now, that's all the Gen 5 stuff. Right. This is like the Gen 2 small block LT1 with the OptiSpark little, like the distributors in the front of the engine. They constantly have misfire issues. You can't make a lot of power with them. And overall, it's an engine platform that if you just spend like $1,500 or $2,000 extra and you jump into the LS1 F body, so much easier to make power. I'm talking about a difference between 100 wheel. Like if you do a head cam swap on a LT1 Gen 2 small block, you're making 350 wheel horsepower. I do that on a LS1, I'm making 450 wheel horsepower. So that's 100 wheel horsepower for the same amount of money and the same amount of effort you put into it because they're both pushrod engines.
Right,
so
right.
I would stay away from those early F bodies. Mustang wise, I probably would stay away from like some of the pre-Fox bodies, like those 70s Mustangs. There's really not a lot to do with those. Fox body is the king platform in my opinion. It's just everybody does it, and so I'm like bored of it. Like if I see a Fox body now, I'm like, okay, cool, Fox. Yeah. Like, yeah, I know it's fast. I know it has all, like you throw a Coyote in there with twin turbo. I know it's going to beat everything on the street. Cool. I just don't care. Literally. It's like the Fox bodies, just too many of them. Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to, I guess, engineering, like what do you think is one of the coolest motors ever designed?
Coolest motors ever designed would probably be the 1LR GUE. So a lot of people hear this sounds Toyota. Yes, Toyota. Toyota owns this company called Lexus, and Lexus made this supercar back in late 2000s called the LFA. So this was that V10 inside of that car. That it was a V10 that had the dimensional size of a V8 and the weight of a V6. It could rev from idle to 9,000 RPM in less than a second. And the intake and the exhaust was all tuned by Yamaha. It was like, it's one of the coolest engines when you look into the engineering side of it, like how they designed the rotating assembly, like pre-bending the rods to work for like, to like counteract like some fatigue and stuff like that. Like there's so much engineering just marvel in that engine. And it was put in a car that the car was just like, kind of, I would say like the car was a little bit too late to market. Okay. Like, the engine was amazing, but the car was a little bit aged, and like the LFA, the way that it looked, and also like the transmission has a single clutch transmission in it that just wasn't a quick shifting. It was almost like an Aventador, where like you'll hear Aventador SVJs. It's a very clunky transmission because it's not a dual clutch, and it's just. That car right now, they fetch $700 to $1 million.
No, it's crazy
in the used market.
The sound, man,
the sound is amazing, and it's just one of those engines that like that is the peak naturally aspirated engineering marvel. I would say of like best engine of all time. And now everybody makes a video about it. Everybody talks about the LFA. LFA is like right now like the 12-year-olds Instagram commenters like favorite car. Oh, the LFA, and nothing's better than LFA. Yeah. I get it, but like there is some awesome engineering in that engine. In my opinion, that's like the best one. Now, for naturally aspirated. Now, boosted, it's going to be hard. I know it's maybe a little controversial. I would say the VR38, the GTR mode, is the best Japanese turbo engine probably ever.
I don't think that's. I wouldn't even argue that.
See, that's the whole thing, because I know people that are big on 2Js. I know people that are big on RBs, and especially 4G63 guys. Evo
Okay,
guys.
2J. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I said that. But I mean, I they make crazy power.
Exactly. I mean, and just the block design itself, like a lot of those block differences and some of the design stuff they did during the mid 2000s for the VR, it trickled down into the VQs, like the VQ35 HR, like the dual intake setup, how the block is split at the crank center line with a bed plate. All that carries over from the development of VR38 and that little G35 coupe on the Nürburgring with all the little panels to kind of trick all the media and stuff like that. It was super cool how they did that.
It's also a V. It's also not an inline. So I guess there's a lot of differences there that can kind of be difficult to kind of argue with. But I could see why you say that's probably really the best.
And the thing too is people forget about with V engines versus inline engines. Like the original designer of the R34, like what's his name, like Kazutoshi Mizuno, he wanted to throw a VQ in the R34 GTR. Initially, the R34 GTR initially was supposed to have a VQ engine.
Right.
The Japanese economy was like stagnant during that time, so they can't really spend the money for research and development. And the VQ has been in production since the mid 90s.
Right.
So later on in the GT500 race cars, they had a VQ30 DETT, which was a twin turbo version.
Right.
And that was the precursor to the VR38. But you have a perfect balance of, since it's a V configuration, from the side, it's only 3 cylinders. So rather than inline six going very, very further out, and some of the weight is over the front axle, making it very, very understeer prone, having a V that you can push way deep into the
towards the firewall.
Towards the firewall, deeper into the engine, has better handling characteristics. The way that the turbos can be mounted can be like right off of the exhaust ports, where you can have them spool up very, very quick. And the R34 was supposed to have that. The R34 was pretty much supposed to have the VR38, but back in like the late 90s. They didn't follow through with the program. They wait some time. They come out with, in 2007, come out with the R35 GTR. And that shows you that everything that the R35 GTR did was supposed to happen in the late 90s. They just didn't have the money to do it. They've been wanting to do that. And you can see now that is like literally one of the craziest like cars to really just like, for me, like the most impressive car in the last 20 years, R35 GTR, like no debate. So
they did put there's a swap, or maybe two, that have put that motor in the R34, but I don't really know if it hits the same.
I guess I'm just so used to the sound of an inline six inside the R34s, 332s. If I hear a V6 in it, it doesn't sound right. When the R35 came out, it wasn't like amassed with critical acclaim. Like whenever if you read some of the like 2007 reviews, people are like, oh, this is like playing a Game Boy, like, oh, this is like a computer on wheels, or it's like a PlayStation. And then other things like it doesn't sound as the engine wasn't as smooth, or it didn't sound as glorious as the 34, the 33, and 32. But where they skimped out on sound, I would admit that it doesn't sound as good as an RB. But they made up for in just brutal power capability. Now you think about it, like that car when it initially came out, the ECUs were locked. They were like encrypted to the T, and they wanted that engine and that car itself to be like just like a standalone model. Like, hey, this is the GTR. You can't tune it. You get what Nissan engineered. And once what's that company name? I believe it was Cobb.
Cobb, they had that earlier.
Once they cracked that, then that was just pretty much the snowball effect of the whole GTR pretty much community. And you see there's companies completely built off just purely building GTRs. Like that's a very small niche. I'm like, you're only building one motor. Like the VR38 only came in the GTR. Like you're only building one motor, one style of transmission, one style of car, and you have a fruitful business off of that. Like that's how integral that car has been into car culture. And to me, it's like I'm gonna have I'll have an R35 GTR one of these days. It may be a 2009 early non-Nismo whatever.
But you can
it just
facelift. You get to change the bumper if you want.
To me, it's a very, very cool car, and I feel like even though I'm super American LS this and that, it's just a cool car to have.
I wonder how much of a role influencers have played in that, because every big YouTuber, like over the past, I guess 10, maybe 15 years now, that's like the go-to car.
Yeah,
for a lot of like YouTubers when they first get, the big
it's like
check
the
or whatever.
wagon. Yeah.
So I wonder how much that kind of like helped with the marketing of that car, because it's like a car, if you have $100,000 and you want to throw it towards something, it's like, oh, that car goes.
Yeah, some of the GTR people like on YouTube, like before, like I saw like that Dan Rue, like Dan Rue, like
before,
right now.
I'm talking about before.
Yeah,
Dan
but
Rue.
way before that, way before like another guy on Instagram, like Artist Fast. He has like a fast GTR, and he rolls with it.
Yeah.
But like before that, like I don't remember really watching any GTR specific people. There was like a couple like YouTubers.
Not on YouTube. No, it's not a YouTuber car, but like when YouTubers come out and talk about their collection, it's like
they're always gonna have a GTR. Yeah,
that's what I mean.
It's part of the collection.
It's not a popular car that if like YouTubers get into and they just start making content off of. I feel like the content cars are usually like Hellcats.
Hellcats are big content cars like that.
Are big content cars, and now I would say BMWs now too. BMWs right now. And then back then, I'm not really sure what else was outside of that besides the Hellcat that was a big content
some
car.
Mustangs, like a GT500.
Mustangs, yes,
and,
Mustangs
like that. You'll find like the best content cars are like the ones that are super easy to go fast with.
Yeah.
Like a Hellcat, even though, for example, you're paying more money than a Scat or a RT, like pulley, headers, E85, that's 800 horsepower.
Yeah.
Like that quickly. Or like a GTR, you can throw bolt-ons on it. Or some of the BMW stuff, we know that's very, very easy to go fast. So I feel like from a content perspective, you want to have the least amount of like invested and try to get the best return off the content. And you want a quick turnaround. You don't want to do a build like, oh, we're building my GTR and then it takes 4 or 5 months. You want it to be quick.
That's right.
So
that's
like,
a fact.
as quick as it can be. That's why people start flocking to these platforms as content creators. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, but some of the stuff like I've built and taken as long as it doesn't make for very good content creation, but like I get more fulfillment out of it because that's just really the car that I like.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I know some of the people like that are in the content creation, they're not BMW guys, they're not Hellcat guys, or they're not GTR guys, but they buy those cars purely because they know they can make money off of them.
Right.
So I understand it from a financial perspective. It makes sense.
It makes sense. I think the biggest car right now in this current time is Coyotes. I see a bunch of F-150s. I keep saying, but F-150s. Yeah, F-150s. That's like the most common.
Especially down here in the South, in Texas, and Houston. Coyote F-150s, that is just like, that's the wave right now. That is the Mexican GTR. Like, that's what I always say. That's the Mexican GTR. Yeah, like that is the wave right now because they can pit the power down. All the advancements of tuning and all the hot tuners, they're all working with those platforms and boosting fuel. They're like 1,000 wheel horsepower. You can
all-wheel drive.
Pretty much all-wheel drive. I'm like, dude, it's hard to beat. And those trucks are light too. Those trucks, you can, if you're good with the Sawzall, you can get those trucks down to sub 4,000. Sub 4,000 pounds.
With a Sawzall.
Yeah, if you go with a Sawzall, I've seen some crazy stuff on Instagram. Like people gutting their like brand new Mustangs just to run 60 to 130 or like 60 to 130 times or like quarter mile times. Like this a couple people on Instagram, like literally no dash, just the bar that goes across, no hood. They got like the big trumpet intake off the throttle body. The signals and the stuff is hanging down, exposed wiring. For what? Literally, and just to be like braggadocious, I'm the fastest NA car in my area code. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. Fastest car in the 1, 2, 3. Like, and then all that, and then after doing all that effort, all that gutting and stuff, a similar car running on pump gas with a whistle blower will blow his doors off.
That's it.
It's just like
cooked.
Okay, cooked. Yeah. At that point, what is the point?
So do you have a lot of Hellcat guys out here?
Yeah, there is a fair SRT community down in like, especially Louisiana, just in the South in general. We have to think about like in the most of the people that flock towards like the Charger or the Chrysler platform. A lot of people, they live in the South like that. It's just people that look like me. So it's just at the end of the day, it's a popular platform down here, and I think they get a lot of hate. Sometimes it's for good reasons, especially the takeover community. They just kind of like poisoned, like literally, like all of the Dodge scene. Like I don't want to be associated with the Dodge scene. Like I like the idea of Hellcats. I like the idea of I drove a Scat Pack for like a day. It was a great car, the Zf8 speed transmission, shifts very, very good. It's a fun car. It comes factory with 245 tires, so you're making 480, 490 horsepower. You can slide that car around anywhere. If you want to learn how to drift for like very, very like easy and kind of safe-ish, like that's a good car because it's long. It has a long, so it doesn't kick out very, very quick. But it's just like the whole takeover community has completely ruined the idea of that car in my head. Like if somebody told me between a Mustang, Challenger, Charger, and a Camaro, I'm picking either the Camaro or the Mustang. Like I just don't even want to touch those cars because you're automatically grouped in with a certain group.
It's like a stereotype.
Yeah, it's just a stereotype thing. That's all. And you just got to move, and you just got to move accordingly with that. It's just because.
No, I feel you.
You know what it is.
Yeah. No, I get you.
Yeah.
But is there anybody racing with them out here? Like, do you see like a lot of people that aren't going to takeovers that are actually going to like the pad or something like that and doing some runs?
Here and there, there's a couple of people down here with Hellcats that run them pretty fast. I wouldn't say there's people down here with Hellcats that are running them like Boosted Luckey. For me, Boosted Luckey was. I know people are gonna fight about like he wasn't the first to do this. Like I get that, but he was the person pushing that platform. Like when I go on YouTube, getting 20 million views on a Hellcat video and he racing people on the highway and stuff. I'm like, this dude really pushing that platform. And seeing him go to TX2K, a lot of people didn't have the balls to run at TX2K. And
as a content creator, which is
and that's the thing
not
too.
Thinking about,
just pitting himself out there, running his car, he run into problems. His problems that he's running into is because his car makes 1,500 freaking horsepower. Like you have to forget about it. He's on the transmission style is the factory style trans, even though it's built up. But like you're ripping input shafts completely apart. He's making power, but he's running into issues. But the ability to put himself out there, I'm like that. I commend that guy for that.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is. It's like the Hellcat platform. I don't see them like being super, super fast, especially around here. But you can go fast with them, but you're gonna be at the point where you're gonna be innovating stuff because like that mid 7-second 8 HP 90 sleeved Hellcat with a 3.8 liter Whipple that hasn't been done yet. So you have to get to that point and actually push that platform that far because everybody else, when they want to go fast, they just throw a turbo 400 or 480. They go with like a GM transmission in there, which I get it works, but if you want to push that 8 HP further and further down there, you need the boosted Luckies to keep on pushing it, come back and re-innovate and push it again and push it again. So
he's definitely one of the main people that's obviously pushing that platform heavy. But it's kind of been quiet for the Hellcats right now, it seems like, social media wise.
I think people are waiting on the new Hurricane engine powered Challengers and whatever, or I think they're the Challengers or the Chargers or whatever they're called. But I want to believe that like the new Hurricane engine is going to be like the next S58. Like it's a 3-liter twin turbo. There's a 500 horsepower stock. I'm like, I like the idea, but like I just don't know if they're going to like shut the tuning side of that engine completely off. Because BMW really like they crack down on tuning real heavy.
A lot of companies have, I feel like, right?
Yeah, on the newer stuff, all the S58 stuff, they kind of crack down on tuning real heavy. Where like sometimes like it'll take years to crack the ECU architecture.
Right.
But hopefully the new Dodge platform with the Hurricane engines isn't that hard to crack, but I just don't think it's going to garner as much of an audience as the Hellcat stuff. Because the Hellcat, man, every time I guess maybe like a couple years ago, every time I open Instagram, I would see Hellcats blowing flames everywhere, doing donuts and stuff. And even though I don't like the takeover scene, it makes the platform popular. So I just don't think there is as much of like shenanigans you can do with a new Challenger with a Hurricane and all-wheel drive. Like it just doesn't seem American. It's going to be, it could possibly be a very good roll racer or a very, very good dig car, but is it going to be like the theatrics of a Hellcat? I don't think so. I don't think the Hellcat whine sold the car. So you're not going to be whining anymore. You're going to have blow-off valves. You're going to have all-wheel drive. You can't do donuts.
It's going to be different.
Like it's going to be, at that point, it's just, okay. I'd rather buy a G80 X-Drive M3 or M4 or whatever.
And just go.
Yeah, with that. And it's actually, it can handle.
Yeah.
It actually can turn. So
that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So right now you have how many cars? So like how many builds are you currently working on right now?
So right now, I have my CTSV wagon. That is going through a very in-depth build process. So basically what I'm trying to do with that car is I want to make 1,000 wheel boost only. So we already built the engine. Pretty much we're at the point where we just need the ECU to talk to each other.
Okay.
But this build is a 416 stroker, Callie's Dragon Slayer crank, Callie's Ultra rods, JE Ultra pistons. A company in Houston used to be called Modern Airflow Dynamics. I don't think they're there anymore, but we built a set of LSA heads with them. So they're CNC ported Inconel valves. We got the valve springs and hardened push rods, custom grind cam, and then for boost, it's a Kong 2650. So it's a better blower than the old 1.9. So you can push that blower pretty far. And then we have the LSA lid with the reinforced brick, and then we have nitrous spray bars built in. So even if I don't touch that 1,000 rear wheel horsepower number on boost only, which I know I can, it's just the weather around here being 90 degrees all the time and boosted and supercharged engines. Like I want that power like all the time. So it means like realistically making 1,100 and on when it's hot, it's making 1,000.
Yeah.
But if I can't do that, I'm just going to spray 100 shot on top and then we're going to beat that number by far. But like that is my Halo build, my personal Halo build. Then we got this. This is like pretty much a collaboration with the shop. This is pretty much like the dig truck. We want a truck just to go out there and just pretty much race from a stoplight. So it's a 416 stroker LS3, but with a 6L80 transmission with all-wheel drive. It has an all-wheel drive system out of a Escalade, which required us to pretty much redesign the whole front suspension. So we have Corvette upper control arms, a Corvette spindle, Corvette brakes. Like when you take the cab off of this and look at the frame, dude, it's beautiful. Like it looks like one of those roadster shop builds, but when you put the body back on, it's just an old work truck. And that's the thing. Like I like those type of sleeper type builds. Yeah. And that's how my wagon is. My wagon, like a lot of people look at it like, hey, this is a station wagon, but hey, it makes 1,000 horsepower. So and that's the cool part about it. And then, other than that, I have my Bronco. One of the new Broncos with the 4-cylinder in them. It's a fun little truck. I put 37s on it, and it's just something just to go bomb off-road and just have fun with friends. Other than that, I have another LS swap Colorado. It's kind of like a junkyard style build. I bought it already swapped, and it's very good at doing burnouts. And other than that, I've sold a lot of my collection or my builds or whatever. Yeah. Like before I had a Coyote Mustang. A lot of people didn't think I just talk about Coyotes. Like I had a Coyote before. It was a New Edge 99 Mustang with a Coyote swap in it. So the story in this car was initially a road racing car. They would take it to like Road Atlanta and like race it on the track. So it had Maximum Motorsport built suspension everywhere, a torque arm rear end, coilovers, big 4-piston Bear brakes all the way around, a tubular K member, and had a Coyote swap in it as well with a sheet metal oil pan and cage inside and everything. Racing seats completely gutted inside, super loud, and the car ended up blowing up at the track, on track. So going through the process, the owner, he was looking to get the engine warranty because it was a brand new crate motor from Ford. And he was like, oh, it blew up, and trying to go through the process, and they denied the claim or whatever. So he just sold the vehicle to the shop. So this shop over here, and Jacques bought it for like $4,000 or whatever, like some cheap price. And then he ran into another Coyote motor. It was like, okay, this is going to be the perfect one to swap in there. It was like a Gen 2 short block, and he threw all the Gen 1 parts on it. Okay. So like a maximum, an MMR, billet timing set, some boundary oil pump gears, and just pretty much it's just a Gen 2 short block with the better center forge rods with a Gen 1 top end and all the Gen 1 timing components. So it's a 2-2-1 then a 3-2-1 build like what people are doing now. Right. So once that build was done, he built that engine, and then it was a Friday night. He pushed the roller into the shop and drove it out at like 4 a.m. So like literally overnight got a swap running, and he ended up selling it to me for like 7 G's. I mean, he made money on the deal, sold it to me, and I daily drove that vehicle for like 4 or 5 months. One of the funnest cars on the face of the planet, like the funnest cars I ever drove. 5-speed manual. They had a problem with locking out in the shift because it revs so high. The original 2-valve engine only revved to like 6,000 max. This engine was revving, it was a Lund-tuned car, and it was revving to like 7,500. So at that speed, the transmission is like, the case is starting to twist, and it's kind of like binding some of the linkage in the gears and stuff. So like if I short shifted it, I can shift it real fast, but if I rev it to 7,500, I have to kind of wait for it to pop in. But other than, man, I learned a lot of car control in that car. Sometimes like late at night, by like 11 or 12, okay, everything's died down, go find one of the spots on the empty parking lots and just slide the car around and just kind of learn how it snaps back, and you get a good feel, because when all you ever do is like drive long sedans or something, you get used to a certain dynamic. So when you jump into a new edge Mustang with a solid rear axle and it's a little bit shorter of a wheelbase, you have to really be on top of that car. The car didn't have no power steering either, so it was like a racing car. So you really have to be on top with it, and it kind of teaches you a lot. And it made me love Coyotes, because every other cammed LS that I had, like my Trans Am, after 6,000, it's wheezing. It's like there's no power left. It's just like you feel it fall over like that. But this one, I mean, I'm looking at the gauge, 6, still pulling, 7, still pulling 7,500. Now I hit the limiter, and now it's time to shift. I'm like, bro, this engine is revving to like 7,500 RPM. And like hearing some of the podcasts from like Alex Flores, he's like, oh, sometimes they be tuning those things up to 8,000 RPM. That's like Ferrari numbers. So like, I kind of like slowly fell in love with that engine. Like, okay, this is the next evolution. Like for me, going from the small block days to the LS days, and then for the LS days, I'm in my Coyote era right now. So that's kind of my favorite domestic engine, something that I can play with. Like, even though I have these lists, like what I think is the best engine, like the VR38, I don't have that VR38 money yet, so I'm messing with Coyotes now. So yeah, but that's just how it is.
It's always interesting hearing about the revving. That's the most interesting thing on the American side, because coming from a Honda, like that was like a given. That was like something that you just easily have access to. You just don't have the access to the power and displacement, of course. But the fact that you can rev on this is what amazed me more about that, which is why I kind of have more interest in the Coyote platform over an LS. And it's like we've stated before, it's very similar to like a Honda. Like I feel like RPM gives the engine a bit of character. Like imagine if the Lexus LFA only revved to 6,000 RPM. It would be cool, but it wouldn't be as cool. It wouldn't hit the same. So like when you hear the GT350 revs to like 8,250 from the factory, it's like that's cool. And hearing those exhaust notes like all the way up there, things are just screaming. And you can do that with a non-Voodoo Coyote, like a standard 5-liter, a Gen 3 Coyote, tune some cams and a Cobra Jet. You can rev that to 88,000 and like 8,000 RPM. And talking about screaming, bro. Like I don't know the reliability at those RPMs, but it's a very cool engine. And I think America was like too late to the dual overhead cam game. Like, I would say Ford was the earliest. Like Ford's been building the modular overhead cam engine since the early 90s. And like one engine that inspired the modular Ford engine was the original 1U Zf8 from Toyota. And that had an LS400, so it had that engine in there. It's very, very similar. If you look at a 1U Zf8 and look at the like original 4-valve Lincoln Intech motor, they look very, very similar. Because they're even though they're different companies, there's a lot of inspiration that happens between engineers all the time. So it's like, and you'll typically see that with like intake design or the port designs. A lot of times, like, hey, why do these ports look just like the Lexus and the Toyota? It's like they're two separate companies, but they're using the same philosophies here. So why do you think a lot of the motors sound the way they do, especially like the LFA?
One of the biggest things a lot of people forget about is like the firing order and the configuration of the crankshaft. Like with a traditional V8 like an LS, the exhaust pulses aren't evenly distributed through both banks. So you have this rumbly sounding bloom, 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 bloom sound to it. But whenever you have like something like a Ferrari V8 where it just sounds very, very smooth and high RPM revving with a flat plane crankshaft, the firing order and it being a flat plane crank, the exhaust pulses are evenly spaced. So they hit your ears evenly rather than like a traditional American V8, whereas rumbly, where some of the exhaust pulses are sometimes too close together and some of them are too far apart. So you have that space, and that's how you get a rumbly sound. Now, the firing order itself is also important when it comes to making power, especially for turbo engines. If you look at BMW turbo engines, they have a weird firing order where it wants to evenly space the exhaust pulses to keep constant pressure on the turbine side of the turbocharger. So it has consistent flow, because if it had like the rumbly sound to it, if you ever heard like the F10 M5 or F90 M5, it doesn't sound like a rumbly V8. It's very, very smooth. And they do that so it can spool the turbocharger very, very quickly like that, and it's in a hot V configuration. So like something as simple as the firing order and the exhaust pulses have a tremendous amount to do with power delivery and spooling turbos and things like that. It's a lot of intricacies that happen at like the slow speed level on engines.
So the head, what about the head? Because one of the things that I always thought was like the head, let's say like on a 2J, because Yamaha had involvement in that as well, right? Yeah. So it seemed like people always said like, well, because Yamaha was involved in the head development, that's why it sounds like that. How much of a factor does that play into the sound? Yeah,
I mean, the way the exhaust ports are shaped, the intake ports, and especially the exhaust design where the length of the runners have a huge amount to do with that, because when you change the length of the exhaust, you're changing where power delivery happens, like where some of the scavenging effect happens, but also you're spacing some of those pulses away from each other. So like with the Lexus LFA, they had Yamaha tune the exhaust manifold, the full exhaust system, to get pretty much the exhaust pulses to be a certain spacing apart, so it sounds a certain way, a certain frequency as well. And like there is sound tuning in the exhaust, not just, it needs to be loud and raspy or just shoot backfires and flames. Like you can tune the sound into it. Like H pipes and X pipes, those will change the sound characteristics. Like if you have a Coyote Mustang and you put an H pipe on it, the H pipe is going to sound deeper, like a more like a throaty sounding V8. While the X pipe is going to scream, is going to have like that traditional Coyote sound where it just sounds like it's almost like an octave higher for like at its high RPMs. And that's like different exhaust components do that. So when you look at the Lexus LFA, the way they do that, like there's a lot of science into it. Like some of the science is just beyond my comprehension. That's why you get a team like Yamaha that makes pianos and instruments and equipment to build your exhaust system. And that's why the car was worth $1 million. So yeah.
That's crazy. Learn something new every day.
Hey.
So how do you feel about the Ford the Barra? The Ford Barra, like I haven't done super amount of research. I want to make a video on it because I just feel like it's one of those engines that a lot of people just don't give the credit it deserves. Yeah,
but
it's getting more popularity now too. Yeah,
it's for me, it's like the big block 2J. I mean, it's 4 liters rather than 3 liters, and it's, to me, from an aesthetic perspective, I think it's a good looking engine, like especially some of the later ones with some of the cladding and the Ford logo on the front.
It's interesting.
I like the aesthetic side of it. Now, power wise, some people are doing sleeve blocks, 2,000 horsepower. I'm like sleeve factory blocks, factory casting. I'm like,
it's heavy though.
Yeah, it's a heavy engine. Yeah, but there's a couple people domestically that have swapped those into Fox bodies and actually run them in like power cruises and stuff, like on one of those drag and drive events. Yeah. So like there's a couple Barras stateside that actually do stuff, but I think it's one of those engines that it's like it doesn't get the credit it deserves because it's in a format that all the legendary Japanese engines are. So like you have to compete against the RB, the 2J, and this little Ford motor, but it's actually a good motor.
That thing cooks,
it goes. Yeah. One of these days I'm gonna get a Ford Barra and swap into something.
I feel like people would be interested in seeing that.
It's in my list of things I want to knock down. I get that request all the time. Where's the Ford Barra? Where's the Ford Barra? I'm gonna unsubscribe if you don't do a video on the Ford Barra. Like it's coming, bro. Like trust me, I'm just doing my research right now.
So you've had this kind of like this influencer kind of history where it's like you get on, you get views, you disappear for a little bit, come back, and I feel like people who are full-time in this, it's an emotional roller coaster dealing with life, other things you have going on in life, and you know, it becomes tough to kind of keep up with content and kind of keep up with the demands. So what is preventing you from constantly putting out content right now at this moment?
So like right now, like I spend so much time making like my full length videos. Like a lot of people don't know, like people think I have a team. Like the videos you see on YouTube, that's purely me from the side of.
Which I'm in shock you said that. I'm like, I thought he had an editor.
Yeah, from the research to the script writing to the editing to the models to pretty much everything that I do, it's all purely me. So it's me pretty much just hunching down and just crunching on a laptop. Like just it's a nice Apple laptop or whatever.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, just crunching down on a laptop for a solid 6 or 7 days creating a video. Once I'm done with that, I need that mental break. And then by that time, I'm like, okay, I'm refreshed. I got new ideas. So I can come back to the table. It takes me another 7 days. So there's always a large space between videos. And from the TikTok side, I kind of moved away from TikTok. I moved away from TikTok for multiple reasons. So initially, like I grew my TikTok account initially from just doing like explain videos, talking about camshafts, being like a very, very laid back scenario, not very polished like my YouTube videos.
Right.
And I would joke around, talk shit about other cars and just kind of joke around. And that TikTok grew. My TikTok organically went from 100,000 to 1.4 million subscribers, not subscribers, but followers in the course of like a year and a half. Or like year and a half to almost 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that was my biggest platform. That's what some people will say, like, that's what they know me from.
Right.
Even though the YouTube is like really what I mainly do now. But even as I was growing in popularity, there's a lot of problems I would run into. Like TikTok promotes a lot of like what I call brain rot. It just purely like this is content that necessarily isn't educating, isn't helping anybody.
Right.
You're purely just doing it so you can extend the video to a minute or more than a minute so you can get some more revenue. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for my videos to really do that when the video is kind of explaining things and sometimes it may get boring or I have to do or say something very risky to get the attention. And like, I hate that. Like I just want people to come to the videos for me rather than I have to grab everybody's attention with something like that. And then at the same time too, I had a house fire. So like my truck that I normally drive in caught fire in my garage and took half the house with it. So I was dealing with that. Then not really wanting to change up my content style and kind of seeing my views kind of lackluster a little bit. And then I would see people on TikTok as well impersonate me and take my clips from YouTube and take my clips also from TikTok as well and repost them and started making money off of that. Like it's during the time where clipping started getting real popular. So people would take my old TikToks, they'll block me on TikTok, take my old TikToks, repost it to their page, and they were getting like 6-7 million views. I was pissed, bro. Cause like during the time, like, bro, I just had a house fire. Like I gotta fork up cash. I can possibly absolve myself trying to fix this situation. And other people are making money off my content. I was like, screw this. I just shut it down real quick. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna come back to the TikTok platform at a later time, but I'm just going to just nip this in the bud. So all their other pages, all the other people making money off of me just can die down. And then I can go back to TikTok with new ideas. I don't want to rehash old stuff that I previously did. But
you couldn't report any of that content and get it taken down?
TikTok isn't good at DMCA. Like I reported content. One of my buddies, Jacques, he would always send them to me like, hey, this person is impersonating you. I would write the report. Take me 15 minutes to write the report on TikTok, send it in. Never do anything. See, on YouTube is very good at DMCA. Like if you
they'll let you know.
Yeah, they'll let you know, and especially like I'll look at it. Like there's a couple pages on YouTube that are taking like 80% of my video, or it's like sometimes they'll take 100% of the video and they'll just do a reaction to it.
Yeah.
Like they'll just put like the face cam on the bottom right or bottom left. And I'm like, cool, you can do that. I'll just
that's different though.
Yeah, that's different. It's a reaction.
Right.
But like blatantly stealing my content, impersonating me, using my same profile picture, my same description, all that. And it's just like, and I know you're making money because I see that the video is longer than a minute long. I'm like, bro, like and I calculated one time, like one TikTok account was making at least 10 G's a month off of my content. And I was like, and that was a time, bro, my house caught on fire, lost my truck.
So you was going through it.
Yeah, I was going through the motions, bro.
Yeah,
I was just pissed. Like, yeah, I'm shutting this down. Yeah, pretty much like that. And then it caused me to really hunker down on YouTube. And the reason I got very good at YouTube, if you look at over time how much better the content is from the writing, from the editing, it's like, hey, this is my only platform that I'm making money off now. So I really got to hit this hard and I really got to lock in. Once I did that, like I feel like even like from the bad of the situation, that was the good that came out of it. I really hunkered in on YouTube, and it blew up. Like, I'm at that time when the house fire happened, I had like 230,000 subscribers. Now I'm at 430. So like another 200K subscribers came off of that. And they're still rolling in. The latest video I put up has 1 million views talking about a Subaru WRX STI that was running from the cops. Like it's just, I'm polishing my content now. So
I think it's the storytelling aspect of it also, and it kind of keeps you hooked in. Like, it's just engaged, very engaging. And the stories that you're picking is also kind of interesting too.
Yeah, like,
you know,
I pride myself on like trying to tell like a new story. I always try to find a new story. Like, even though like somebody may have touched on here and there, like, but like one of my most viral videos is about a Lotus Carlton that ran away from the cops in Britain. And like a lot of people have never actually seen a picture of that car. Everybody knows about the 40 RA Lotus Carlton, but nobody's ever seen a picture of it. And I found a news clipping on a news website. Well, like for example, Ancestry.com, they catalog a lot of newspapers from all around the world. So if you pay like $70 a month, or like I think it was $70 for the year, you can have access to their little search engine that you can search up like certain topics, and they'll give you news articles that have been like scanned like that. Like, I guess they go through the scanning process, and it uploads everything into their system. And I found the actual picture of the true 40 RA Lotus Carlton, and that video has like 5 million views, and it's a full length. It's an 18-minute long video. And like, I always try to add new information to the table. Like, if I was to make a documentary on the LFA or the Ferrari F40, there's no new information, element, angle I can put to really tell the story differently. So that's why a lot of people ask, where's the LFA video? Where's the F40 video? I'm just like, I can't add anything to that. Like, if I wanted to make a Pagani Zonda video or something like that, or like another guy that does the video essay side, his name is The Squid. He probably made one of the best documentaries on the Pagani story in general. I won't even make a Pagani video because it's just too good. It's too good. So like, I just don't want to compete with that. I'll stick to my lane. He'll stick to his lane. And that's the whole thing too. Like, I have respect for other creators in the space as well. If I see you made a video on something like that, I won't even touch it, just because like, I just don't want to feel like I'm trying to ride your wave. But sometimes I'll see, like, when I make a video, some people make a similar video to that with like a slightly different angle. They'll rip off my script using AI and ChatGPT, and you can tell the difference, like the difference between quality. Like I said before, like, you can tell something was made with ChatGPT because they'll call the Mark IV Supra the MK4 Supra. Like, you can tell you're reading off of like Wikipedia rather than like real knowledge. But
damn, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm going through like a similar thing now. You know, I've been doing this for a year, and I'm like, let me start uploading my content to YouTube, to Facebook. Which, if you guys are watching, make sure you guys follow my my Facebook channel, subscribe, because I just started like focusing on that. But apparently, there's a whole Street Alpha podcast that has like 70,000 followers. Have all my branding, have an email that's not even my email, streetalpha@gmail.com. It's not my email, and they have followers, and they're posting all my content. I can't even. I've reported it multiple times. Can't do anything about it. So I don't even know what to do about that. TikTok, I can't really complain about because I haven't seen anybody who's resharing content. But Instagram, there's people that...
I've seen a couple accounts that all they ever do is repost their content, and they'll put like some GTA 5 gameplay at the bottom or something like that.
I don't mind. I really don't mind.
Me too. I don't mind as long as you tag me.
Mention. That's all you gotta do, just tag, mention. But then I got people that block me. And I say, hey, can you just tag, bro? Like, I'm very respectful, and people just seem to take advantage. So it's like, all you gotta do is tag me, bro. That's it.
Exactly.
Just mention it, and it's that simple. I don't really care. I understand we're on a platform where putting up, content out to the public, but just tag me. That's it.
That's
and then what do they do?
Too.
Block me, and they keep posting. My stuff.
I'm like, bro, on, bro. Now I know that there's a bad side to that. That's like, I hate like the idea of like somebody taking your content, but like posting it and trying to impersonate you. That's pretty much what they're trying to do. And like that's the reason, a big reason why I took down my TikTok is because now I'm scared at that point. Like, okay, if somebody's impersonating me, what are they doing in the background that I can't see? So like, I don't want to, some Diddy allegations come out. Like, I can't have that happen. That's the whole thing.
That's exactly what it is.
And that's the whole thing. Like, I don't want that in YouTube is, and how the world is as a whole. They're very quick to cancel and very slow to kind of get you back. So
100%.
like, I mean, if they was to shut down my YouTube off of some allegations, bro, like I'm homeless.
100%.
So that's the whole thing. So I got to be on top of my stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the main reasons I had to shut that side down real quickly.
You have to develop your own platform. You have to do things for yourself. People work hard. You work hard, bro.
Dude,
I know you. If you do everything yourself, you work hard.
People that clip my videos, if you only understood the amount of content that you're clipping, how many hours it took to really produce that, I hope it would like at least give you some reverence to actually tag me whenever you steal my content. Like, bro, there's so much work going to this.
And I know you're respectful enough to say like, yo, just tag me, bro. Because obviously, you're, like I said before, you're putting your content on the public platform.
Yeah.
But at least tag, man. That's it. We work hard. And it's not, this is an investment also. Like all this stuff, all the equipment, the time.
Money it costs this. The sacrifice. This whole facility is a 7-figure facility.
Cars that you have here, the money that you put into that is time. So like for somebody just to go and clip your content and just... not even tag you or block you is super disrespectful.
Y'all see any TikTok page that don't have 1.4 million followers? It's cap.
337 speed.
It's
Make
cap.
sure, Are you verified?
I'm not verified on TikTok. I'm verified on Instagram, but I'm not verified on YouTube either.
So with the verification thing, right? I actually pay for that on my personal account, and I want to do it on my because the verification thing has kind of been I would never it's a badge now. It's not even what it used to be, but it protects you from actually getting people impersonating you, right? And that's the only way apparently that you get customer support on the Facebook side of things. So I reported that page multiple times, the Facebook page, nothing happens. But the only way is to get a verified badge and to get the customer support.
So they're pinning it behind a paywall.
But it's $120 a month.
Dude.
So I'm like, yo, do you want to pay $120 a month just to like, it's like one of those things where it's like, all right, maybe I'll pay for the month and then kind of, get
I mean,
get
if there's like a revenue generation off of that, I can see it. But if there's if there's no revenue generation, I'm not paying $120.
Nah, it's not worth it. So maybe you should look into like, to some type of verification. That's really what it's for, I think. At this point, it's more for protection. Because everyone's doing the impersonation thing nowadays.
But it's just like another bill I got to worry about. Like I got so many subscription services just to make my videos between Adobe, this and that, like a lot of cloud storage. I'm like, it's not free to make the videos. People just think, oh, he doesn't have a face on it. He's just building this video from this and adding graphics and things like that. But it still costs money. Like the platforms that I use, I got to pay money for. I had to sell my first car just to start this whole thing. I need to get the money back, bro.
That's why I feel your pain, bro. I feel your pain, bro. So out of that, just to close off on that section, like, just do good for yourself, guys. We work hard, and I know this man works hard. If you've seen the videos, the amount of graphics and time that goes into an 8-minute video, it's not even anything close to what I'm doing here. But like the graphics, I'm like, there's no way this guy is doing this himself. It's crazy. Everything. So much more respect to you for that, brother.
Thank you very much, bro.
So what's next for you? Are we going to see you come back onto the platforms very soon after this?
So my main goal, I want to use this as like a jump off point to really jump back into the TikToks, jump back onto Instagram and things like that.
Get the motivation.
Yeah, get the motivation.
I love that. I love that.
A lot of the hardships in my life are like pretty much I'm done with. So like the house is rebuilt, cool. Now I'm just ready just to hit the ground running, hit it hard, and make a name for myself just outside of the polished documentary videos. Now we're gonna see the rise of 337 speed again. So but at the same time too, I have so many friends that I've gained through just the content and through TikTok as well. Like one of my buddies, Garage Built Coyote. If you've seen the Coyote Mustang video that I did a review on, that I gained a friendship with him through the TikTok side. And he knew like Lund tuning and things like that. So I had the Mustang that used to be Lund tuned. So we kind of like bounce ideas off of each other all the time. And then he had the idea of like, hey, your YouTube channel is starting to take off a little bit. You should take the Mustang and go make a review video on it. And I did. And like normally with review videos, they don't really do good on my channel because people look for like the graphic polished content. And this is like a car review, and car review is a little bit like harder to do. You got to compete with like Top Gear and compete with like Throttle House, Doug DeMuro. And like, I mean, these are people that have been doing it forever and like, they have it down. And that video has like, it just crossed over 200,000 views on a Mustang review video, but it's a cool Mustang. It's a wide-bodied 65 Mustang Coyote with Gen 1 Coyote swab with a TR6060 built Fab 9 rear inch and rear inch setup, and he built that whole car in his garage. And whenever you pit it over here, like, bro, like the skills you have, you can probably build some stuff over here. Like, dude, you're actually like, you got some skills under your belt. So it's like, it's cool to highlight, and I always like to highlight like the individuals. I know shops out there, their goal is to like build high level builds and kind of get customers in, but I always like to highlight like individuals, because like they don't have a motive to like really make money. They just want to like build it for the enjoyment. And I feel like that's a more pure standpoint rather than just the monetary gain from it. Yeah. So like I follow people like Garage Build Coyote, the Craig 909, and just like cool individuals that just build stuff purely for their own personal enjoyment.
Right. That's what's up, man.
That's what
I look forward to seeing more content.
That's what I'm doing, bro.
Yeah, it's like, damn, bro, because there's only so many people who are doing similar content to that. I think do you know Theblackcarguru?
Yeah. What's his name?
I forgot his name.
Yeah. But I know the Theblackcarguru. Yeah. I would say like he took like my style. There's nobody that did that style first. Like, so I didn't do it first. I don't think he did it first. But like,
I wouldn't even know, honestly.
Where I stopped, he like kept that style going, and he's kind of like polished it. Like, some of his stuff is just hilarious.
He's like, so funny.
Gary Gwynn, I believe that's the name. Gary Gwynn. Gary Gwynn. Yeah, he's hilarious. Some of his comparisons, he like, this thing nastier than a blah blah blah. Like, this dude is,
it's just the going off a tangent. The slang too that he has. But the thing is, like, you have to have charisma for one, and you also have to be on like good at that. You can't, not anybody, like I can't do what you guys do.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes.
I mean, but when you watch the videos, like it looks like it's one take, right? When you're doing these videos. So it's like, dude, like that's not easy.
There's like 3 takes that go into
even
before
3 though, but like the amount of breakdowns that you're doing in one take like that is kind of like, all right, this guy's really tapped in. He knows what he's talking about. Whether it's like BS, you're spewing a bunch of nonsense to the comments.
I'm just joking around. Yeah,
it's just a joke. But the fact that you know what to say and like how it comes across is like it's kind of genius a little bit.
Yeah, I try to talk engines and performance like the way that like I talk like just with the homies. Like, you don't want to do this, don't want to do that. This is bullshit. Don't do that. This thing gonna blow up. Like, it just, I'm almost like just shooting the shit, but I have the knowledge to back it up.
Right.
So like it just comes off different. I think whenever it hit the platform, a lot of people weren't doing that. A lot of people were either being like super professional or they're just being super bullshit. And I was like the perfect mixture of both. So they hear me talking and they're just like, okay, I got to follow this guy. So
I would love to get to that point where I know enough to just like, you know, I know a decent amount now.
I've seen a progression on the channel.
Yeah,
dude.
I'm trying. I appreciate it.
You're killing it, bro.
What was the first episode you watched?
The first episode I watched was
was like one of the BMW ones?
It was with the guy with the Hellcat, the twin turbo Hellcat.
Stefan, Mods of Fame.
Mods of Fame, yeah. That was the first episode I saw was a Mods of Fame. And like whenever I initially saw like the first episode you had, but it came across my feed and it was like the Street Alpha podcast. I was like, so they're talking about streetcar stuff, because there was like other racing podcasts before, but like there were either like ones that are just like douchebaggy, like all they talk about is like classic Porsches and stuff like that, and then other ones it was just like heavy on like the no prep racing and drag racing, which I'm just not very, very into. But then I saw Street Alpha, and I'm like, okay, they're talking about Honda engines, they're talking about LSs and stuff.
Yeah.
And then with the Mods of Fame one, I was like, okay, now they're going into conversations like B58 versus Hellcat. Like, these are the relevant conversations we're having on Instagram, we're having on social media in the forums and groups, and you're actually like bringing it out on a platform. And then after that, seeing that, then the guests you're having after that, I'm like, bro, you're tapped in. Like you know where
I'm trying to be tapped.
You know where the community is. Like,
I'm trying, man. I'm not it wasn't. I'm just trying to learn, man. Like I always say, I'm just trying to learn. I'm not out here to be a professional. I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
But I'm really genuinely interested in learning. And you don't have to have a shop to be on a podcast. You just have to know enough. Like I'd rather have a good mixture of like knowledge, and if you want to shit talk a little bit and you want to call out people, cool, but there has to be a reason for you to actually be on the podcast, and you have to be able to give some information to people who are trying to get into the scene or whatever you know about whatever platform you're in, you know. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. So this conversation has been great, bro. I'm super happy that I came to Louisiana to have a conversation with you first. I'm sure I'll be back out here at some point because there's plenty of other people. I know the pad is I don't know if it's close to here.
Yeah, in New Orleans. We're in Lafayette right now. So it's just 2 hours away. Hit up the pad, barbecuing, seeing cars take off, crash. It's cool, dude.
Yeah. So I think the next time I would like to come out here with Dan.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be pretty cool because he's kind of, you said he's tapped in. So
Dan, like, I initially saw Dan down here, even before he had the GTR, he would race down here all the time. So like people just learning about Dan, like Dan really been into the stuff, like especially in Louisiana, very, very heavy. So sooner or later, I mean, we got to meet up with Dan. We got to collab. We got to do something.
His
GTR is crazy.
No, 100%, 100%. So just let the people know where to find you on social media.
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at 337 Speed. That's pretty much all of the stuff that I do. So like between like documentaries on cars, explaining engines, explaining how exhaust systems work, and pretty much just breaking things down to where like the next generation of car people are really getting into the automotive scene. They can kind of be steered into the right direction, and not just purely to takeovers and dumb shit. Hey, learn about engines first. You may become an engineer one day. You may develop the next B58, the B59, or some shit like that. So
100%.
I'd rather steer the community in that direction. That's what I do.
That's facts. That's facts. You heard what the man said. Take notes.
Take notes, bro.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. I'm not sure what else we have for the rest of the day. It's 4 in the afternoon. I leave tomorrow, so I'm sure I'll probably just hang out at the shop or figure something out. But do appreciate you, man.
Absolutely, bro.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll be in contact again, or we'll probably have you on an episode
anytime
again.
You need me, dude. You need me a little guest on the pod or something like that, a little co-host, dude.
Co-host be crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be dope. That'd be dope.
Let's do it.
But thanks again, man. Thank you so much. And then the shop as well.
Yeah, thanks
hosting.
Mad Hatter Garage for letting us do this while they're trying to get a truck done before an event tomorrow.
Yeah, I feel bad.
This is last minute, but I absolutely thank Mad Hatter Garage, the buddy Jacques Dubois.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, bro.
Thank you so much, man. All right, guys, until next time, make sure you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you also cop some merch. We have some stuff out right now that you guys can purchase to support the brand. And we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.